Hi, good evening. Welcome to the town board meeting for Tuesday, February 11th, 2020. We have a rather full agenda and we are running a few minutes behind schedule, so I'm going to keep my report relatively brief and just encourage everyone to take a look at the Town Hall e-news, which will come out tomorrow and will contain a lot of newsy updates that I won't bother to go through this evening. Just a couple things I wanted to announce. Census 2020. Census 2020 is coming, and tonight the town board is going to welcome William Brady from the Westchester County Department of Planning, who will inform, not quite yet, our community about the county's 2020 census campaign to ensure that every Westchester County resident is counted. And also this evening, the town board will pass a resolution to create the Newcastle Census Complete Count Committee to assist the town in ensuring that we get a full and complete count for 2020 census by creating and disseminating marketing materials, hosting special events, and engaging in other activities to encourage residents to be counted. I was asked to provide an update on the construction of the Millwood Cell Tower. Homeland Towers has now received all of the necessary approvals from the town, county, and state to begin construction on the Millwood Cell Tower. The cell tower will be built adjacent to the Millwood Water Treatment Plant. The building permit we expect to be issued sometime later this week, and we have been informed that the target date to begin construction is sometime after February 17th. Revenues from the cell tower will be specifically allocated to make improvements to the Millwood hamlet, such as constructing a salt dome tower to enable DPW to provide better snow removal services to Millwood and the West End. And my only other announcement is that it is winter break next week for those of us who have school-age children. And since that includes all of your current 5 town board members, we will not meet next week. Our next meeting will occur on Tuesday, February 25th. And if anyone is looking for something to do with the kiddos next week, I encourage you to check out all of the programs that Recreation and Parks offers through the town. There's a magic workshop, there's a model airplane class, which sounds really cool, pizza and bingo and crafts, there's a mini camp at the Art Center, and there's even a field trip to Dave & Buster's. So our rec department is always incredibly creative in coming up with different ideas and programs to delight our youth and also their parents. So please visit mynewcastle.org to learn more about that. And that's all I'll go through tonight. Do you have anything?
It'll be in the report.
Okay. All right, so with that said, come on down.
Thank you very much. And at the microphone, or is there a clicker that I can use? Should I stand over here?
You
What do
can
you
move
think?
the microphone.
You can take
Oh, I can move the microphone.
You can even
Or
take it
just
off
take
the
it out of there.
stand.
Oh, I'll use the stand because I'll
Have
probably
a seat
drop
if
it.
you would like.
Great, thank you very much. Supervisor, Town Board. Again, I'm from the County Planning Department. This isn't really just a civics lesson on the importance of the census because we're doing particularly a large outreach this time because we're very concerned about undercounting. We've been concerned with the census every 10 years with undercounting in particularly some areas of the county, but this year for the first time, and we'll go through it, the census is going to be online. Everyone's going to get a letter in March with an ID number, and you're going to go online. So that is concerning because folks either may not have access to computers, or folks are also concerned about privacy, concerned about scams and things like that. So I'm going to go through that a little quickly. There we go. As most of you learned back in school, census is important because it's mandated by the Constitution, apportionment of districts for Congress and local districts. But we like to stress that the census estimates that $880 billion a year comes down as related to local census counts. A number that we like to put out there also that really presses the point is that for every person that's not counted by the census, it costs your community $2,500. So each person, 400 people that aren't counted in your community, which can very well happen in your town, costs $1 million a year in schools and hospitals and roads and police and fire. So that's the kind of money that comes down related to these only once every 10 year census counts. So what's new for 2020? Like I said before, it's going to be online. The census has also been snooping around, looking at buildings and trying to make sure that they're finding out where all the hidden units are and things like that. Another part of just background, the census is the thing that happens every 10 years. What also comes out in kind of a rolling mailing every year, every month gets mailed what's called the American Community Survey, or ACS. That's kind of the long form that gets mailed out and asks a lot of questions. We have to point that out because some people may say, oh, I just got a census form, or last month or something. A lot of people get that ACS survey every year, every month. So that's always going out, but the census is the simple form. They're just asking about your name, your age, your race, do you own or rent? And again, citizenship, you may have heard this, is not on the census, and that's another big concern the last couple of years, but that's not on the census, but it has raised some concerns about also the response. Just really quickly, having to do with particularly privacy and people fearing whether or not their information is going to be made public. Your private census information is not given out to anybody except in the Census Bureau. We don't get it. Under penalty of fines and prison, it doesn't even come to you as a town, the census information. But here you've got census blocks, block groups, and census tracts. Sometimes people may be concerned, particularly if there's only 1 or 2 homes on a block. It's a physical block, to make it right and a right and a right and a right. If there are very few homes or units in a block, someone might be concerned that, that information might get out there, but that's not the case. Pretty much information that's released by the census is at the census tract level, and there's only several census tracts in the whole town. We work with your town and all the towns, and leading up to the census, combing through data. One of the things that we're concerned about is, in combing through all the data over the last couple of years, we found that the census actually didn't know about 24,000 dwelling units in Westchester County. So we worked with you and your staff and all the other towns. So there's a lot of concern that, and we've been working and training some of the local building departments to get in things like building permit data to the Census Bureau on time. This kind of effort is going to help us in 10 years, in 2030. But that's another thing that we're concerned about. This is a map of 3 different municipalities.
How come Newcastle wasn't on that list?
I'm sorry?
That's what I just
Yeah.
asked.
How come
There was
Newcastle
one-
wasn't on that list?
Maybe it's like coming up.
Let's see, local, Luca, that might have been, those are municipalities that you did a good job and you responded and things like that. So you're not on, maybe that's the bad list. Yeah.
No,
Just
we
making sure.
respond, every
So,
year
I
diligently.
think I
Yay, killing.
touched something here, so, So the next map is an aerial map of 3 different municipalities, New Rochelle, Town of Mamaroneck, and Larchmont. The blue wiggly line that you see was the municipal boundary that the Census Bureau had on their maps. We corrected it with the thick white boundary, and you see, there are a lot of houses in between those 2 lines that were being miscounted between the 3 different municipalities. So, again, we work with your great staff on trying to correct these types of things over the years. This is a kind of big, long timetable that's basically saying since 2018 through 2019, Census Bureau has been gearing up and launching, and they're out there right now up in the wilds of Alaska and in the mountains to the hard-to-reach places. But this timetable, basically that's saying that most of the country, if you don't live up in the mountains or don't have a P.O. box, most of the country is getting a letter in the mail and not a form. And this is the real set of calendar dates that I wanted you to see. The forms are rolling out in March. Mailing number 1, they're going to send another letter and then a postcard saying, please, please answer the census online. By April, then they start to send out, if you haven't answered, a questionnaire. And after that, they'll say, please, another postcard, please answer the census. So that's by the end of April. After that is when the census enumerators come knocking on the doors. So if you don't want to get a census enumerator knocking on your door, please answer the census. And if you're uncomfortable with going online, you will get a questionnaire eventually. And this really points to some of our big concern. I'll show you some statistics on this slide here real quickly. Before the 2010 census, back in 2008, they did a survey. 86% of the people, that's the bottom line there, said that they were going to be answering the census. Only 76% of the people answered the census on the first try. This time around, in 2018, 2 years ago, only 67% of the people said they were going to answer the census. So if that goes down by another 10%, we're only looking at a 50, 60% response rate. That's not good. Again, a town like yours, you may think that you have a great response rate, but with these kind of concerns that we've got about being online and seniors and folks either distrusting government and things like that, we're really trying to make a big push. This is another bar chart. It's hard to see. It basically says that 21% of the people are not even familiar with what the census is. You've got people even in your community, people who are young, they've never answered the census. People who've moved from another country, they've never answered the census. Put that on top of those other concerns, and we're really concerned. That survey that was done, why don't people answer the census? Apathy, concerns about data confidentiality and privacy, fear of repercussions. Someone's going to come and get me if they find out who I am and where I live. Distrust in government, and few perceived personal benefits like, hey, what's in it for me? This is a chart basically saying what would make you answer the census. Hospitals, fire departments, police departments, roads and bridges, all these good things come from answering the census, and those are the kind of things that we're trying to stress to have people answer the census. Your town doesn't have any hard-to-count areas. We're focusing on those areas. Some census tracts in Westchester County are at the top of the list in New York State for hard-to-count areas, so we're really trying to get to those areas. Your town, I'm so happy to hear, is forming a complete count committee. There's a census complete count committee that is reaching out to the county-wide organizations, the libraries, the big nonprofit organizations, all teaming up, trying to reach all these different areas, young people, seniors and people with disabilities, and through the nonprofits and churches and things like that. Another statistic I wanted to make sure you heard was that the most undercounted population in the census are children under 5 years old. People don't think that they have to answer for their children because they're not in school yet. You in your school district, you need to know who's in your town that's under 5 years of age. And just my last little shtick is that where to go. You can call the Census Bureau if you need any help. You can call 211 if you need any help. That's a county United Way number for all different kinds of information. Your local library across the street is going to have staff who are on duty to help answer the census. Library folks?
I'm the director.
So they have been trained or will be trained to help people answer the census. Again, the census is just a few questions. It's only about 9 questions, and it's very easy and quick. And places like senior centers and community centers will also become census hubs, a place with a computer and staff to help. And also very quickly, just to allay people's fears, is that when the census people do come to your door, they're going to have a badge. They're going to have a bag with census on it. Again, this is to make sure that you don't get scammers in your police department. No, the census people will be well labeled and will have identification. And also in terms of scams, even the New York State Attorney General's on this. They're trying to get the word out about this to try to make sure people understand. As usual with scams, the Census Bureau will not ask you for bank account number, credit card numbers. Your social security number will not be asked of you. They're not going to do silly things like ask for gift cards. God forbid, we've heard about those things. They're not going to ask you for identification. You don't have to say, my name is, Joseph Smith. You don't have to show any identification. You're just filling out the form. They're not going to enter your home. So a census taker's not going to come inside and sit at your table. That's a scam as well. And remember, the census is all confidential. This information does not come to anybody in any other government agency, federal agency. It does not come back to the town. So again, just that's an important thing for people to remember. So that's it. Thank you very much. Again, go to www.westchestergov.com/census2020. It's a good place to go. It's kind of all the frequently asked questions. You could also go to the Census Bureau's website. That's kind of big. We already have lots of things like flyers and videos and easy to understand things about the census at the local level, and lots of contact information too. So thank you for the town's efforts. And do you have any questions?
Yes, with the online format on the phone, have you guys tested it out? Is it easy to read? Is it easy to look on the phone? I mean, because a lot of folks
I haven't seen it, and one of the
Okay.
things they're doing is they're kind of holding back on showing everybody what the app, what it's going to look like, what the form's going to look like, because they don't want somebody to take it and recreate it and do something evil with it. So my understanding is that it's going to be easy. It's only 9 questions. Obviously, if you have 5 people in your home, you have to fill out those questions for each one of those 5 people, their name and their age and their race and things like that. I can go into a little bit more about units and families and things like that. You can have a home with 5 people who are just friends. There's one person who will fill out the whole form for all the people in that household. So that kind of, and they will ask, what's your relationship to the person who's filling out the form? And if it's a friend, it's my friend. If it's my uncle, it's my uncle, that kind of thing. So, any other questions on the census? So please spread the word. It's safe, it's important. The dollars come through the census. It only happens every 10 years. And these are the statistics that stick with us for the next 10 years. So it's important. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have our friends from Summit Greenville here.
Good, we're starting off as friends. For the benefit of the new town board members, my name is,
Wow.
just wanted to do that. For the benefit of the new town board members, I'm Felix Charney. For the benefit of those who've seen me since 2003, I'm still Felix Charney. I'm one of the principals of the redevelopment of the Reader's Digest project. As our project matured and started to come to fruition as a result of a lot of hard work by people in this room and other rooms, we've been approached by a number of different uses and opportunities. About 1.5 years ago, the folks from Urban Brands Terrain approached us and asked if there was a place for them in Chappaqua. And in talking to then Rob and Jill and Sabrina and Nick and Ed, it was suggested that maybe we ought to put that on the sidelines. And so although I spoke continually with my new friends at Terrain, we kind of kept that over here. About a month ago, I asked Jill and Sabrina if they would schedule a meeting with Ivy, who would host maybe an informal presentation this evening, so we could tell you what we were thinking about. And that's in fact this evening's agenda. I brought with my friends from Philadelphia, from Terrain. I've got Jennifer and Beth and Al and John, and we're really excited about this. Like everything we've all done together, if it's something we want to do, it's going to take a bit of work, but they're doing it's a wonderfully beautiful product that they have, and I think it fits really nicely on the site. But ultimately, that'll be your decision. So Andy's
This is the terrain that's in Greenwich, right?
Westport.
Okay.
Yeah, we couldn't afford the one from Greenwich. Yes, and they'll show you what it looks like this evening. So Andy's gonna jump up and tell you, 'cause I can't do anything without Andy. He's gonna jump up and tell you kind of where this fits on the site and a lot of those sort of things. But I think whatever time you want to allocate, I think you ought to spend as much time getting to know these folks, seeing what they're doing and trying to understand if you think this is something that I think would be an asset to the community. Hopefully you feel the same way. Thanks for inviting us.
Good evening. Andrew Tung from Divinity Tung Schwalbe. I'm here just to set the context for the terrain presentation. This is a site plan of the existing Reader's Digest, former Reader's Digest Chappaqua Crossing site. In the medium tan color are the existing buildings on the site, which at the top of the slide consist of some of the former Reader's Digest buildings that have been rehabbed either for office use, or on the left side, the cupola building for residential use. The buildings on the left side of the slide are the retail center, which is now almost complete and occupied, with Whole Foods on the left, Lifetime Fitness on the bottom. Across the middle bottom of the site are the proposed East Village 91 townhomes that flank on either side the former Wallace Auditorium, now the home to the Chappaqua Performing Arts Center. At the north end of the site, some of you may have driven by at some various points in your travels there, is a small building shown in the darker tan, a 10,000 square foot single-story building that's occupied by the Auto Center. This was first set up by Reader's Digest as a convenience for its employees, and has continued in that location even after the digest has left. Terrain, in its investigation of the site, thought that that particular building, because of its simpleness and its character and its location, would be a good candidate for rehab as a main component of their store.
Where's the auto center gonna go, or are they just gone?
No, the auto center, that's the first question that we get.
It is the first question.
The auto center, we're looking to relocate on-site under the loading dock, which is at the north side, or the west side of the 500 building, which is the building in the middle of the office block. The loading dock is, if you know, is completely covered. It has 9 loading docks, which served Reader's Digest when it was publishing a lot of books and materials. There's no need for more than 2 or 3 of those docks now, and so the balance of the docks and some interior space, we would propose to be outfitted to relocate the auto center. So now the medium brown has turned to light tan. The existing building has some lettering on it that you can't read, and then there are some additional buildings around there that are all part of the terrain experience, which now Jennifer will walk us through. Jennifer Kaliagis from Terrain.
A little shorter than Andy. Jennifer Kaliagis, I'm here to walk you through the Terrain brand a little bit. I think that some of you might be familiar with the brand, but for those of you that aren't, I'll try to give you a little bit of an orientation. Simply put, Terrain is a garden center, but it's not your average garden center. It's a brand that's uniquely focused on customer experience, which originates really from the overall brand. We're actually celebrating our 50-year anniversary for the company. And this is a company that started in a little shop front in West Philadelphia, making tie-dye T-shirts and a jean swap. And then they decided that selling plants would be really cool, and so they started selling plants. And then they wanted to have a little coffee shop and cafe, and somebody started making food, and it kind of evolved, turned into Urban Outfitters. It was called the Free People's store whenever it originated. It evolved into Urban Outfitters. Anthropology came along further in the genesis of the company, and then Terrain is one of the newer elements to one of the newest brands to evolve within the company. But I think that in a way, it's kind of bringing it back to what the essence was and where it really started. It's truly a lifestyle company. Terrain is really a merging of home and exterior, right? And so you're bringing together these environments, and you're trying to create this unique experience for everybody. They source the globe to find really unique products, beautiful quality merchandise. They work with local purveyors, local makers and artisans. They're bringing in sustainably sourced products and eco-friendly products, and really offering a curated selection of items. So really merging home and garden together to create an experience, an overall lifestyle experience. And in some ways, I think that original concept that they had of the Free People store was a lifestyle concept before lifestyle concepts were a thing. And so Terrain, right now we have 3 existing locations that are full Terrain sites. The first one was developed in Glen Mills. 2008 we opened. Glen Mills is a nursery. It was an existing nursery that we then developed into, expanded upon their retail. We opened a greenhouse cafe, and that was the beginning of something great and something that we really liked. And bringing back that cafe aspect, the food aspect, the lifestyle, that was something that really resonated with our executives and with the brand, and really created an experience that was kind of unparalleled. Second location was developed in Westport, and this was a very different site. It's actually a little bit more similar to what we're looking at here in Chappaqua because of the existing shop that's on the site. It was a car dealership in Westport that we worked with, and brought the planting and the outdoor the nursery component to that. And then 2 years ago, we developed a lifestyle center in Devon. Pennsylvania. It's on the main line, it's a suburb of Philadelphia. And that we created a large lifestyle center there as well, bringing the train. We also incorporated anthropology into that, but that's we've got train cafe, and then the event business as well. So the train sells indoor and outdoor plants, home goods, kitchen goods, beautiful planters, really pulling together a really unique blend of products. You can go and make they've constantly hosting workshops. You can go and make a terrarium, you can make a seasonal wreath, then you can have a coffee. If you're not the hands-on type, they have design services so that you can actually have them make arrangements for your home. They can actually come to your home and decorate it for the holidays for you. And so it's kind of evolved organically into this indoor-outdoor lifestyle environment. The cafe then evolved as a piece of that, as an extension of the Train brand, and they work with local farmers and makers. They're trying to bring in it's a rotating menu of seasonal foods, so whatever's local and fresh and in season. They're always kind of working with that. They'll often host dinners with local makers or with a local winery. And so that's something that's evolved off of that. Usually we're around 50 to 75 seats in the Train Cafe. There's a barista component to it, so we've got a daytime cafe and business, and then brunch business, Friday, Saturday, Sunday brunch business, Saturday and Sunday specifically the brunch business, the dinner business is very big for the Train Cafe. The Train Cafe is based upon the idea of a greenhouse, and so you're in a unique greenhouse environment, surrounded by plants and really immersed in the train experience in the cafe. And then the event business kind of evolved organically off of that. The train environment's really beautiful, and so it naturally lends itself to wanting to have events there. Stiers in Glen Mills was the first location where we incorporated events. And then the Devon location also as events. We are focused around any kind of life celebration. We host a lot of weddings, bar and bat mitzvahs, corporate events. We have smaller parties. We host workshops in these spaces as well. So this is something that typically we're looking at anywhere between 100 to 150, depending on the size of space that we're looking at going into. But it's really focused on more of a boutique wedding experience. It's not a big reception hall. We're not having 20-piece bands in here. It's really more of a boutique wedding experience. So the indoor component, we're usually bringing in reclaimed materials, and then we have an outdoor garden. We usually have a ceremony garden, a porch. You can have your reception, string quartet, and then we'll move inside for the reception. And then we really kind of all blends together to create this really beautiful experience. And we really like this site here in Chappaqua. It feels like it's a good. The way that it's sited is kind of unique, nestled into the hill. It's really nice to have a nice community to move into. It's nice to have the adjacent retail, but the fact that this is kind of tucked away and tucked into the hill, the feeling of seclusion and destination, that's something that's really appealing to us, and so that's why this site feels like it could be right for the brand. Yeah. And then this is just a night image of one of our sites. It's pretty low slung and it's kind of quiet. Not too assuming, but we feel like it could be something that would fit nicely in here, and I don't think that we could be a nice addition to this community. So on the site, we would like to utilize the existing garage that's on the site. We did use the dealership in Westport, and that worked out really nicely for us. That's a nice kind of industrial structure that creates a good base for us to work off of. The thought here is that we could then build off of that with some greenhouse-type structures, and then create the event business, push as far off to the site as possible to create a little bit more of a private environment. And then we dropped some, just kind of worked through programming, put together some imagery to make sure that this felt like it was a site that could work for us. Pretty early in the process still, but just wanted to look at how this could fit on there. We have John Gwynn with us, who's our Director of Store Design, and if you have any questions about materiality, he is the one that can help us out with this. But really building off of the kind of a little bit more industrial and the masonry in the existing building, with the greenhouse structures and bringing into it more of like an updated rustic but comfortable feeling complex of buildings. Yeah. So John, I don't know if you have anything to add to what we would.
So is it being sold, for lack of a better term, as a gardening restaurant, as home goods? What is it? I'm sorry. Is it being sold as more of a gardening center, restaurant, home style goods? And what is the main targeted audience, and who do you expect to come, and from where, for that matter?
I think the main business is really more of the garden center and
Yeah, hi, I'm Beth Brewer. I'm the managing director.
Can you come up?
Yeah.
And she drove up from Philadelphia.
She drove.
So I would just say, emphasize what Jen has said, but it's really very unique in the retail space as far as a concept. So it's what we say is sort of the intersection of home, garden, and gather. So the cafe and the events being more the gather. So as many retailers are out there trying to figure out how to bring people back into stores, we feel like we're at the cutting edge of that, the lead of that, because it's one thing for us as brand representatives to sit here and say, it's wonderful and it's, experiential. But in our customers' own words, and I was just at a PR event with editors and influencers in New York, they are saying it, our customers are using words like magical and peaceful and wonderful and, amazing. And they make remarks like, I want to live here. I want to take it home with me. So what we do is a very, we affect emotions because everything in the center is very sensory based. There's the fountains going and the food to enjoy, the gathering, the family, the generational experiences that are coming through it, the plants, very peaceful and calming. So we're touching all of those senses, but also in that effort, creating a really amazing community, whether it's what's happening in the store or just incorporating what's going on in the community into our programming. And to get back to your, more detailed question, we're targeting, our target customer is 40 to 60. But if you walk into any of our current facilities, and it sounds like some of you are familiar with it, you will see generations moving through it. So that 40 to 60-year-old female is bringing in, the granddaughter and the daughter and the husband and friends and family. And that's often the case, but it's also sometimes just a peaceful sort of oasis for that person to come in and just be. So I like to say that we're not just another shop or another retail box. We're somewhere where people want to gather and linger and just be, which is so unique out there. So, and that's coming from the gut. It's not necessarily scripted. That's not something we market to, but really when you hear our customers talk, and we oftentimes are out there when they're in the store, it's sort of amazing. And I'm a jaded retailer, been in the industry for a really long time, and this brand and the passion that goes into it from the team, and then we get it back from the community, it's pretty amazing.
It's sort of a little bit more of my question. Is someone coming, for example, to buy a Japanese maple or hydrangea, or are they coming to sit down and have coffee, or are they coming to have a drink and
Yes.
All
dinner
of the
and-
above. So like the Westport location that was referenced earlier, our team there tells us that the customer comes after dropping off the children or doing their workout for coffee in the morning. They're coming in for coffee and maybe gathering with friends. And then they might shop on the way out, but then they're coming back for lunch. And then they're shopping and doing more of like that, looking at plants or looking at the home goods. And then they may even leave and come back later for dinner with a partner or spouse. So in that location in particular, it's become really a hub of the community, just in terms of socializing, but also, being able to come in and take advantage of workshops that we do on a regular basis, or, just coming in and shopping. So it really is, at any given moment, it could be all of that, or it could be, just a destination for that one item they're looking for. We also host what we call seasonal events. So in our locations that have all the three components, we do, for instance, a holiday open house, and that's an all-day event, and the programming around the site becomes even more than what we would typically have there. So we'll bring in artisans and makers from the community and sort of celebrate whatever, holiday or season it is. And really, again, they could just be coming to do their Christmas photos because we have wonderful photo ops and Instagram moments within the site, or they could be coming in to, drink, eat, have the children, sort of participate in different children's events that we program, or do their shopping as well, like get some of the ornaments and the holiday gifts, for later. But it's hard to pin down exactly because at different moments it's different things. But the beauty of it is part of the community, and, people are using it to purchase, but also to just enjoy each other.
So I have two questions.
Yeah.
The first is, so you are selling outdoor plants. Do you have a lot of trucks going in and out?
Well, we would deliver on a similar sort of cadence as we do the hard goods, is, more the home product. So we would have deliveries of plants, similar to how we would have the deliveries of the hard goods.
Right, so are there a lot of trucks though going in and out? Somebody's buying a Japanese maple, they're not putting it in the back of their car.
Oh, that part of it. Oh, you're talking about the deliveries outbound.
Right.
Yeah. So they'd be scheduling the larger items via truck.
And can those be scheduled at certain times of the day, so they're not, for instance, because this site is right across, it's in the back, but it's right near the high school, we get a lot of traffic that time of day and at certain times of day. And near the sawmill, so rush hour, certain times are busier than others. So would those,
We
would
could
you be
work
able
with the
to work
community.
with it and schedule?
Yeah, definitely.
And then, one of the things we're always concerned about too is we want to protect our downtown merchants as well. So are you also amenable to kind of adjusting what you offer a little bit so that it's not putting downtown retailers out of business?
We could look at it, but I don't know that, most of what we're doing is own brand, so it'd be very different in terms of not a direct competitive product assortment. It'd be unique to terrain, so good majority of our products are own brand, so it wouldn't be direct competition. We very much focus on differentiating and getting exclusivity so that, if you're picking between a downtown retailer and us, you likely wouldn't find the same products, objects from both. It'd be, slightly different.
Okay.
Sort of picking up on some of the concerns that Lisa raised with regard to truck traffic. You did a lovely job, and it was a beautiful presentation, so thank you for that. I'm curious about the 3 locations that you have open today and whether any of them are in close proximity to residential neighborhoods. So one of the concerns that I have when I hear you talk about events and dinners and late nights and that sort of thing, is of course that we have the, sort of townhomes that are over there that are going to be built, as well as folks who are living in single-family houses on this Cowden Lane. You would not know it, but it is adjacent to the property line there as well. So I'm just sort of curious what the feedback from other locations
And
has been
this is a
like.
familiar concern. We actually, in Westport, we are in proximity to residential as well, but Devon specifically, which is the project that we just opened up a year and a half ago, we're directly adjacent to a residential community that is similar in a lot of ways to this community. And so we worked very closely with that community as we worked through the process in order to get them comfortable with the events and the restaurant components of it. At the end of the day, I think they would all come back and say that it's that their concerns were unfounded, but we did work with them to set time. We worked with them on the times that we were closing. This is not the kind of business that is loud and rowdy, and so in that sense, it's not as a little bit. Some of those concerns are not as founded in this business, but in this business model. But we did work with them, especially with the events, to make sure that we were moving those events inside after the main ceremony and cocktail hour. And it's the kind of business where they're having like a string quartet play during the wedding ceremony and during the cocktail hour, but then everybody moves inside. And so we did work with them too to set some limitations on what time we needed to make sure that things were inside, people were off of patios because of the adjacency to the residential community.
I have lots more questions, but those are the only questions that I had for the two of you about the
Okay.
terrain products itself. Did
Anyone
anybody
else? Thank you.
Thank you. So, Andy, is there more to your presentation, or?
Not really. If you have 2 more minutes, I could just go back to the main slide. We recognize that to allow this to happen, there would have to be a slew of approval process involved.
The
We
official
have-
term, a slew.
Yes, a slew. This would require rezoning because currently the retail overlay is restricted to one area on the site and maxed out at 120,000 square feet. This is in a second area of the site, still within the commercial zone, within the BRO 20, but has additional square footage. There would need to be environmental review in parallel to those that we've done for the other developments on the site, but looking at the same things, traffic, for instance, parking. We've had the benefit now of having worked under the existing parking management plan. The retail center is 85% leased. The 200 building is fully occupied. The office building has been occupied, so we can do counts in both the office and the retail parking to see how those could be shared. At the beginning of this process, the idea was to draw lines between the parking areas. I think as the different uses have grown together on campus, it makes more sense to look at them as a resource, a shared resource, because parking practices are also changing. People's vehicular uses are changing. So we're trying not to build excess parking in any locations. And this is an opportunity in the north end for shared parking, because the primary hours for terrain would be on the weekends, in the evenings, some during the day, but.
I intend to go there and just be.
Okay, well, then we
In the middle
can
of the
set
day.
aside a space for you.
Being flippant, but I do sort of challenge that a little bit, I think. that
Well, we
based on what I've
we
heard, it's,
have 3 operating terrain stores. We can take parking and occupancy data from that and overlay it on what we learned here and see how that would work together. Connectivity is also an issue. You can't see it here, but if I go to the next slide. This is a map of the walks and trails at Chappaqua Crossing. The light orange are walks in and around the retail center, the office building, and what is proposed within the East Village. The dashed orange are trails through the meadows in the East Village, or around the East Village and around to the north. And what we show in blue are additional, through the encouragement of our town planner. How do we connect, for those people who do want to walk, between the residential, the office, the East Village, and terrain? How do we connect those areas so that you can do that? So we would look, as part of this project, to add the blue sidewalks along from the East Village, along a portion of the Loop Road, crossing over from in front of the 600 building where Northern Westchester Hospital is, across the top of what will be the stormwater basin, to connect over to the terrain parking lot. So in that way, people can traverse the entire site. Now, you do walk through parking lots, as you do in the center of the site now, but where there is an opportunity to put walks, either the blue sidewalks or the dashed blue lines would connect the trails in the north end. We think that's an important component of connecting this site, which is a little bit remote, to the balance of the property.
So
for
you're
those who
not
want to walk.
proposing to create any sidewalks then from that would sort of complete that loop, then past the Chappaqua Performing Arts Center?
To,
Because the Chappaqua Performing Arts Center looks like it's on an island.
yes, there is, let me borrow this. So part of this proposal would also be to do some of the improvements which we've studied at the Performing Arts Center, including the new accessible parking on the south side. And this just highlights walks. So this is a new landing area here and walks going out to the front. we can certainly, one thing I noticed as we were preparing this is that there is a place to put a sidewalk connection here from that new sidewalk to the retail center. There's not really an area to make that connection across the extent of the loop road because of all the things that are going on both sides.
But there is, because you're getting rid of that berm. Remember?
There is here, yes, it's a little tougher up here. We can take a look at that, and that would be another place to possibly put a connection.
I'm sure the terrain folks would love to be able to capitalize on the folks who are coming to Chapel Performing Arts Center for performances in the
There's
evenings, be able
certainly
to walk
a
over and have
synergy
dinner
there.
and then walk back. So maybe this is something you guys would like to push for as well.
Can I ask a question? Where is the event space? Can you just indicate where
The
it is?
event space is right now planned at the back here.
Okay. So the farthest spot from the currently planned residential?
Yes.
It's a steep grade.
And it's over the hill and down the hill.
It's a steep grade, yeah, that's a walk.
Yeah, if just me, if I went to something in the chat pack, I might actually drive. My wife
Right.
would make me
You
drive.
might drive, right, or you might walk there and have someone pick you up to bring you back.
My husband walk.
I will tell you, I drop my car off plenty times to get fixed there and walk up to Chapac. It's not that bad.
Okay.
I'm just curious, one of the things that has come up repeatedly, as you know, is and mentioned, is the traffic count, because you're adding so much more density, not necessarily residential certainly, or the Whole Foods or whatever it is, or Lifetime, but you're adding density right off the sawmill by the train track, and we want to make sure that people aren't traversing 117 across the entire place in front of the high school, on Reader's Digest, Roaring Brook Road, pardon me. I just want to know how this is going to work, what kind of numbers you're looking at. I don't see even residents within that community, if you're going to buy something relatively big, I don't know what that means to each individual, are you really going to walk down there and back with a big potted plant?
Probably not.
Right, so even internally, you're going to see driving. And then to Lisa's point, we have, I don't want to say florists because they're more than florists, but garden centers within reason in both hamlets. We don't want to see that as much as we want to see something like this, because I do believe it as an asset. We want to ensure that, as best we can, they are not damaged and unable to perform and provide for the community. So I think it's a balancing act.
Have you guys looked into any of the traffic impacts yet that you would anticipate to see from this? And do you think that there are any additional improvements that would need to be made to any of the feeder roads to the site?
We've not gotten to that point. This was really to introduce terrain to you, and as I said, this would require a zoning amendment, so it's really, your decision as to whether to entertain this proposal. If you would say, yes, we'd be interested in hearing more, then we would begin the process of identifying with staff what should be studied, how should it be studied, and what would make a full application for you to review.
Can I just ask a question? The big square you have is the current garage, correct?
That's correct.
So where you're building, go back to that green one. Yeah, so.
Now let me
no,
go back to the blow up.
Okay,
Well, go back. There you go.
yeah. Okay, so proposed terrain, so that's kind of like the
That's the
garden
shop.
center shop. And those other buildings where you're gonna have the cafe, I'm assuming, and the event space, is that on current existing blacktop?
It's about where the end of the auto center activities are. Some of it's, if you go up there now,
Yeah,
it runs off a little bit into the cleared area.
yeah,
That's the extent of the cleared area.
okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your attention.
That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you
Thank you.
thanks for entertaining that.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us.
If we're invited back, if this was application light, I know you're eminently aware that we're capable of doing application heavy. So,
So what's the next step? Do they put in a proposal of what's the next step for this?
Zone change petition.
well, my next step is for you folks to caucus amongst yourself and make a determination, how you feel about this, and maybe enunciate some of your concerns so that we can, let's learn from all that we've done before. Let's address the concerns up front. Let's figure out the things that everyone's concerned about, the noise, the lights, the traffic, the parking, all the rest. I happen to be a monster believer that we have the site is a perfect candidate for shared parking. It's evolved into a shared parking environment, and it's going to be my job to convince you that that all works. But you guys caucus, tell us how you feel, enunciate what you like, what you're concerned about. So let us respond to that, however you want us to respond. I look to you, Ed. And if we have traction, then we will formalize this and do whatever we need to do to make it happen. I simply wanted to add, I am not a glutton for punishment. As much as I love you all, and sometimes I feel like I live here, I wasn't excited about pushing.
You should live here.
I'm sorry?
You should live here.
I wasn't looking for something else to do with the next many years of my life, but this concept is so cool. I'm from Westport. My wife lives there. It's a real asset, and it's a wonderful asset to the site. And some of our tenants who are already on site are really excited about this. They see it as accretive to their business. And Beth, I think, said something really interesting, which is one of my concerns as a developer. How do we get ahead of e-commerce? We work so hard to build this thing, but how does it continue to succeed? And we have to innovate. And I thought these folks just fit so nicely with all that we were doing, and it's so aesthetically correct. I thought it was worth the effort, even if it means I have to come down here again. So whether
Jeez, wow, some harsh feedback for us. So I guess, Felix, my general reaction to this would be, I loved Beth and Jennifer. You guys did an amazing job. You have an amazing product, and gosh, I really want to go hang out there. Unfortunately, you're not getting Ivy Pool, the mom, you're getting Ivy Pool, the town supervisor. So I would have hoped that for as much as they did their homework, that Summit Greenfield would have come and done a little bit more of theirs. And so some of the questions that you heard us ask tonight are things that without kind of more definitive responses as to what do we expect the traffic impacts to be from this, how are we going to get to the parking numbers that we need to get to, and what would that parking management plan look like without at least some more steps taken on those items? I think it's hard for us to say more than, it's cool.
You're right, you enunciated that when we spoke, but we had actually made a decision, because Jill had given us 30 minutes to just try to keep it conceptual. We have a lot of that, and we certainly can get a lot more. We know what's involved with getting through the process, but we were actually trying to be cognizant of the limited amount of time that we were offered, and I wanted to get my friends from Philadelphia to be able to get on the floor and talk to you about what this was. So
Conceptually, it seems like a great idea. It's the devil's in the details and how it's
Yeah.
going to work.
and we
It
can
does seem
get
like a nice fit, but
Thank you.
how does it happen?
Thank you.
And how does it impact the community collectively? So
We welcome the opportunity to come to respond to each of those things, but more importantly, thanks for letting us come and talk about something in concept. It's nice to get ahead of an idea.
Sure.
Rather than have everybody react to something, which is kind of how we kind of got to this place. But now we work together, and it works, so thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming all the way here.
Thank you.
Okay, it's time for public, do we have anybody who's here for public comment? Mr. Ehrlich?
It's good to see you.
Yes,
Very good to see you.
John.
Thank you. It's good to be seen. I'm very, very glad. I'm probably known more for causing heart attacks than for being one, but we are all here. I want to thank you all for the hard work you've done. I've been noticing the initial meetings. Sorry I missed your inauguration, but we're glad to have you and let us know how we can help. A couple of things I wanted to bring up, if it's not too troubling. First, it's a very big thank you, because the traffic lights are working. This was probably the least expensive, but the most effective new feature that was added to areas in town. Yes, full stop at South Greeley, North Greeley intersection. But guess what? It works. People stop. It slows down the speed. It encourages people to, while they're doing it, to look for parking spaces, perhaps help some of our retailers, but more on that. The other traffic light that I'm more intimately involved with is the one off of 117. The addition of the left lane mitigated the stop as it was all expected to, and I think congratulations are in order for this and the previous town boards and that have serviced and allowed that to be. The traffic light going across, the primary access to Whole Foods, the one that goes over to Horace Greeley High School, has been very effective in covering that. It has slowed down the speed in a way so that people aren't racing by. I didn't do any speed checks, but it is working. An incorporation of the traffic light plan and keeping it going works. But I see a development even bigger than all of that folks can do. From the library, which and a performing arts center, is one end of town to the other end of town, up to the top of King Street, 117 over to Chappaqua Crossing, or if you want, take 120, go to Millwood. The town doesn't have to end. And I encourage, in all things possible, that we develop this kind of keep it at home strategy and work it that way. So I wanted to thank you for the traffic lights. Probably the only person that's ever come here to thank you for a traffic light, but then again, part of my cause a heart attack strategy. The next thing I wanted to mention, and this is part of the town development that I think is most important, is something that I'm calling bringing the arts home. Bringing the arts into town so that we can keep people in town. That's wonderful strategy for helping folks, keeping at least an 18-hour strategy so that it's not just commuters going to and from the parking lot in town and getting on the train. This is something more, giving people a reason to come to town, much as Jacob Burns Center has done for the movies. We can do it for everything else. Which brings me to my next point. We want to bring the arts into town. We don't want to make them feel like they're stepchildren or my ex-wife's kids or something like that. This is more important. The Chappaqua Orchestra is forced now it performs in churches and they perform on the road. They're not at a home. So I've been talking to some areas, events around. I think you've got different strategies for audiences. I think you have 100 people as a limit, maybe 50 people as a limit. Whatever, that's more of a church strategy, and very successfully Musica Antigua and other places have been performing in some of our churches, but I think we can deliver some better acoustics. I think we can deliver better opportunity. The town is trying. For example, the keeping the lights on in winter, maybe all year, brings a sense of joy and wonder to our downtown. It is. It gives us something to look at, other than where's this parking spot and I don't want to hit this kid who's leaving Bell. It's a kind of effective strategy. So CPAC is the Chapel Performing Arts Center. It's key and intrinsic, developing different venues within CPAC that at work. For example, you could take the boardroom, the old boardroom, and make it into a chamber concert venue. And you may or may not have to charge for it. I have heard some reluctance on the part of different arts organizations who either can't afford it and don't want to be there. Whatever we can do to make it a must-do, we should do. So I just wanted to end my comments today this is an experience that happened to me today. Our favorite supplier in town, Con Edison. Didn't expect it, but the town and the people in the town should be aware that Con Ed is now checking gas for leaks. Now, they're not Con Ed employees. This is part of the problems. It's an identification problem. Somebody I didn't recognize. His only ID that he was a Con Edison, he worked as a contractor for Con Edison, was he had a Con Edison keychain that had his identification, but he didn't work for Con Ed. He worked for a contractor. He came by, was not expected, there was no appointment, but we at One Apple Tree Close earned our seal for the Con Ed meter. It meant that there were no leaks. And I just wanted to make town and some of the folks aware that if you do get that knock on the door, when a stranger comes to the door, it can be a scary thing during the day. And so I just wanted to make the town board aware of that. Now with that, I will cut my comments short.
Yeah, excuse me, John, did he attempt to enter your home? Did he knock to get entry to your home?
Yeah, he rang the bell
Yeah.
to enter the home, to actually inspect the gas meter, because the gas meter, in our case, was in the
They
basement.
did that to me too yesterday. They knocked and said, we need to read your meter. And I
Did they
said,
provide some
it's
notification?
outside.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, I didn't know it was outside. I said, shouldn't you know it's outside? You guys installed
Well,
it.
the guy doesn't work for Con Ed, that's why he didn't know. So the Con Ed problems unfortunately continue, and our $22,000 generator is now up and running, so Con Ed can do whatever they want. We know what's gonna happen. But I wanted to just make folks aware, because if it happened in our home, it might happen to others. Sorry for my lengthy comments.
We can reach out to Con Edison and remind them that if they have contractors who are coming to our residents' homes to do inspections, that they need to provide, be
Or at least make an appointment.
properly
With the
sort of
ID, and we
let
would
us
send
know in advance.
notifications
Make
around.
an appointment, yeah, but I wasn't sure that the town was aware that this was happening, so I wanted to end my comments, spent all the good news and about the traffic lights and development of arts. So let's work together to make this town the absolute best we can possibly
Thank you,
do.
John.
Have a nice
We're
night.
expecting you to be around for a long time to help us.
I'll try.
Good.
Thank you.
Are you here to speak about the form-based code?
Yes.
Oh, we're about to open the.
I thought it was an open
You have
mic.
public comment?
It is an open mic, but we are, if we're here to speak about the form-based code, let's just, open up
We have a
the.
section of the meeting.
Yeah.
Hi, my
So-
name's Margaret Ferguson, and I have a comment about the terrain proposal I just heard.
Yeah,
I wasn't aware of it until I heard the presentation, but I'm aware, I know the brand, and it's a juggernaut. And as I listened to it, I felt a growing sense of fear for our existing merchants. I don't care if they sell terrain branded items, they're in direct competition with flower shops, Millwood Garden Center,
Breeze.
Breeze, King's Garden, many. And it will deliver the knockout blow to our mom and pops. It'll have, Susan Lawrence could be in danger, people who might stop and do this or that in the downtown. I know it, It is a draw. Yeah, it's an experience, but it will ruin it for many of our existing merchants who I shop at, and I appreciate they've been here. They put up with a lot of garbage, and there's, some of them have gone, but some of them are still standing. Not if that company comes here. It will be a major mistake. I have no doubt they're successful, and I have no doubt that the people up at Chappaqua Crossing want them. But if you're looking out for the Millwood merchants and the downtown merchants, it's not the decision to approve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Chuck Napoli. I give heart attacks and ulcers. I don't know if you heard it. I don't know if you, but I heard this giant sucking sound of the life and gathering and of our downtown merchant space going up to Chappaqua Crossing again. I mean, lingering and gathering is one of the key elements that's missing here, and we're going to add a whole bunch of it back up there. I got a problem with that. Second problem, they're adding a lot more retail or activity space. They were given 120,000 square feet to play with, and now they're asking for more. They were given up to 120. We let them have the full 120. And now they're asking for more. And one variance on top of another variance on top of a zoning change. We've moved all of the affordables out of that section and threw them into the cupola building. We didn't do any inclusion. We've really given these guys a little too much, I don't know what. We've given them everything they wanted. And okay, sure, it's taken a long time. But I'm telling you, wish I could remember what I was going to say next, but I can't. But I guarantee you it was good. Oh, here it is. I remembered it. In order to put this 120,000 square feet out on the land, I mean, that number came from knocking down the cupola building or a whole bunch of other buildings, but they ended up with having to make certain spaces dark because there was going to be no new increase of retail or commercial, period. And now they've taken the car building and they shoved it under. So they added some more. They've added some more space to their total, and now they're adding even more space out there to their total. So the question is, I don't know if you guys are going to let them do it because it might hurt the hamlet. I'd love them to come to the hamlet. I mean, these are the guys we want to be looking for. You know, we need those kind of guys in our hamlet. But certainly,
Unfortunately, our zoning.
unfortunately, by the way, if the kick is that they've got a plan, and now you could choose zoning around that plan. They're asking you to rezone that plan, just like, all right, they have a plan and they can do something with it. At least you know what you're getting. Okay, I don't want to go there. I'll go there later. But long story short, there's a lot of space that they're supposed to be dark with, and I'd like to know if that space gets bigger from moving the cars in there and adding all that other stuff. It better get bigger, if you even think about letting that happen up there. They've got enough.
I mean, I think that, to me, it's not a question of whether it's enough or not enough. To me, it's a question, a threshold question which has been raised. How does it compete, which you raised in part, was how does it compete and how does it hurt our hamlet? What does it do for traffic? You know, what is it, so those are threshold questions, whether it's enough or not enough. Is it going to be beneficial to the community collectively? That's an important equation.
We do know that lingering and gathering is the one thing that's missing down here.
Yeah, I'm not disputing, I'm actually agreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm
Thanks,
sorry,
but I don't care about the traffic. It's the
Oh,
people,
I do.
it's foot traffic that we need. Forget about the cars. We need the foot traffic down here, not up there.
I don't think, you
And
know,
thank
when
you for
I asked
thinking
the-
about that.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
always think about the
Yeah.
merchants. And when I asked that question, she said, we only sell terrain branded product. I didn't argue it, but don't think I was
Yeah.
convinced.
Yeah, so
That's
you've
okay.
always been looking after the hamlet, always. And your votes were, I know no votes. I know, I keep track of the no votes. And making this thing bigger and bigger and bigger is another no. Thanks.
So any other any other public comments before we move on to our scoping session?
I thought we were going to have the Battle Hymn of the Republic in the background when you were going.
Okay, hearing none. So do we need to have a motion to reopen?
Open the public, yes, why don't you do
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. You getting a summation or a presentation or just jumping right into it?
Jump right in.
I think we jump right in.
Okay. All right, so we'll.
Please ask people to sign in.
You want to remind people to sign in?
Yeah.
Oh, do we have so we have a sign-in sheet over here in the corner.
There's a clipboard.
A clipboard, if anybody wants to sign up. Do we have anybody signed up yet, as of yet?
Like my term papers, wide open spaces.
Feel free to pass it around.
Anybody wants to speak, please sign in.
So while people are signing in, this is a continuation of our public scoping session with regard to our form-based code. And so just to remind everybody and to set the stage for what we're doing here tonight, the town board has issued a positive declaration under seeker such that we are requiring a full environmental impact assessment be done on our proposed draft rezoning, our form-based code, as it's called. And the process that we're going through right now, the scoping process, is to come up with the correct set of questions that we want our consultants to come back and analyze and answer, such that the town board, acting as lead agency in this case, has answers to the questions that the public, as well as the interested agencies that we've identified, so those organizations throughout town that have some sort of interest in this project have identified for us. When we're gathering these questions, it's critically important that we get specificity around them so that when we hand them off to the consultants that are doing this analysis, they're able to really clearly zero in on the exact nature of what it is that's being asked, and such that they can also think about what are alternatives. So if you have a question or a comment, it's great to say, and I would prefer, or I would like you to also look into an alternative. And thus we'll be able to propose mitigation strategies and such that the town board, as it comes back and looks at this this analysis, this environmental impact assessment, such that we have alternatives before us that we can consider. I would also say, as I've been trying to make clear to folks whenever I speak about this, that what we have at this point is a draft, and we are very open and interested to hear the comments and the feedback from the public on what has been proposed. I feel, and the reason that I know that everybody up here agrees with me, I feel that the comments and the feedback we've had to date have been really important, and they've helped us to think critically already and deeply about what is being proposed. We are open, we are listening, and together I know that we are going to help to shape this into something that will be the best that it possibly can be. So. With all of that said, it bought us a couple of minutes. John Criscantelli. Yes, nailed it.
Good, that's the first time.
It's a good sign.
How many people do that? Okay, I was here last week, and I'm glad to hear that you have an open mind. And again, our biggest concern is 149 King Street. Okay, I do know that our units are zoned 2 to 3 floors, but you're proposing zoning behind us 2 to 4 levels. So again, I'm happy that you have an open mind, but really, as I explained last week, I will literally look into somebody's bedroom, and that's a big problem for us. We have 19 units. Also with the proposed work, we're going to be facing a lot of congestion on King Street, which is another issue for us. So we do have some concerns, and we're happy that you have an open mind, but developing North Street, North Greeley, the way you want to develop it is going to have a huge impact, a huge negative impact on us from an aesthetic standpoint, from the standpoint of living there comfortably with our neighbors, to the standpoint of our view being blocked. So there's really a lot going on, and I would hope that you really, really think about it hard before you make this decision, because I'll be back.
I think it's more than just thinking about it hard. So your comments made its way into this draft
we have in front of us tonight.
So, under, where is it, under visual resources and community character, existing conditions, document the existing views and study the area from the public roadways by means of photographs and diagrams is the view from 149 King Street westward towards South Greeley and the Rite Aid parking lot. I mean, so as these comments continue to come through to the board, whether it was through email or through these kind of public outreach sessions, or even today, Sabrina sat with the planning board to go through their comments. All of those comments are being integrated into this. So I highly recommend going to also.
Planning board?
No, for your reading fun, going to Planet Newcastle. .us, and
Thank you.
it's constantly being updated as Sabrina and us as the town board continue to get feedback.
Thank you.
I feel like, John, I did hear you say something tonight that I didn't hear when you were here 2 weeks ago, and that was with regard to traffic concerns.
Well, sure. I mean, if you're going to develop all of King Street, as I see, into two to four level apartments, that's going to bring more traffic down by us, which as it is now with the stoplight, it backs up all the way. And
Do you have issues today with entry and exit from your
yes,
development?
a lot more now that the lights are up than we did.
Interesting.
Yeah, it backs up.
So that might be one thing for us to think about, particularly looking at, is their ability to get in and out
No,
of.
not really. I didn't think that was appropriate.
No,
To
only
comment
because
on
there
this?
is signage not to block driveways and intersections and basically blocking out that area there, much like we do on 117, crossing.
It's not that anybody parks there. It's
No,
if-
no, 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 no,
yeah.
no, no. When they
Traffic
stop,
backs up.
Oh,
they
okay.
need to stop behind your driveway
Oh,
so that
yeah.
you
That's
can get in
certainly
and
not
out.
clear.
That doesn't
That
happen.
should be something that we can take care of now.
That doesn't happen. But you have to literally wait for cars to get through.
Traffic light at your driveway.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
DOT doesn't like those boxes. We
You
can't
know,
get
we
them
don't-
up by
we don't
Jeffrey
ask,
Crossing.
They'll never put them in, so we might as well.
Okay, I'm P. or Bell, maybe, Frog Rock Road?
I'm new to the controversy. I mean, I'm living in town over 30 years, plus 10 years just on the other side of Douglas Road, so I'm around here a long time. I feel,
name for the record?
that's Philip Werble, W-E-R-B. I love this town. I want it to grow tremendously. I live on the other side of town. I'm like 4 houses from Armonk. So I see what happened there and the vibrancy there and how it's really been very positive there. I have some questions. I'd like to interact with you and then maybe follow up with additional questions. I first read the scoping just the other day. And my first question is, it's maybe a stupid question. I mean, or an obvious question. I mean, what is it that we're trying to accomplish? I know it sounds like a loaded question. It's kind of a weird question, but I really mean it sincerely.
Right.
I feel that in the global way, this dog just won't hunt. That's a terrible thing to say, but I think it's true. We're trying to overcome and I mean, our town is not conducive, I need to say once, about gathering and walking, true. But that's not Chappaqua. It's never going to be that way. To overcome what I feel is a catastrophic decision in terms of the vibrancy of the town, to overcome making that Seven Bridges School, you'll never recover from it, this downtown. It cleaved this town. I remember my kids, when you came down after, when Bell let out, you couldn't drive a car in the street. It was packed, and parents picking up their kids, parents are shopping, et cetera, et cetera. There's a walking and gathering. I mean, it was great. I mean, I remember nostalgic-wise, which is way past history, lickety splits and the Chappaqua Ocean House, but let's not even go there. So, but the point is that you can't overcome that.
no matter what you try to do, and now you have Chapel Crossing, which I think is great. Nothing you're gonna do is gonna make this town better, in terms of getting people down there to shop. Now, for one question, is making 4-story buildings, in other words, we're approaching the Bronx model, okay, or something like that. What's the purpose of that? Once again, a loaded question. Is it to get more population downtown and more population in the town? Is that part of the reason, among other motivating factors here? That's a real question. Is that because I haven't, is that?
That is among the.
Among the reasons.
Among the reasons we are
And-
considering rezoning, yes.
So how many more units are they thinking of possibly having and population, just for that downtown area? What's the ballpark figure that they think that might be? Another 40 units, 50 units, another 200 people, 500 people? I'm just asking, what's the plan there?
So part of what will come back to us in the environmental impact assessment is an analysis where they take a look at what the maximum proposed potential, that's a critical misstep, the maximum potential build-out would look like. As a part of that, we will have an estimate attached to that as to what the maximum potential number of units added. And the reason that I'm stressing both maximum and potential is that obviously this property, much of it is privately held, and it would be incumbent upon those individual property owners to make decisions as to how they want to develop, if they
exactly.
want to develop,
Right.
and not all of them will want to make that decision. So, this isn't a development plan where we're saying, we are going to build 500 units of housing downtown. This is simply a change in the zoning that would then allow for, and we will have that number come back to us as a part of the analysis we'll be getting with the EIS.
I mean, the amount of, I can't imagine that whatever they're allowing to be built could be commercial. So in other words, once again, hate to be provocative or whatever, so it's like a plan to build vacant stores. I mean, that's what it seems like to me, a little bit. Built in like this, planned obsolescence, planned vacancies, if they're gonna make more stores and more retail. Chapel Crossing, which once again, I was in favor of it then. I used to, email or type in, and there was the name of that Chapel
Newcastle now.
Right, oh, yeah, people you scream at me, but I used to, I felt it was great, and it's got better than wildest expectations, whatever. But the point is that, how are you gonna, what's gonna happen? I know the plan is, you know what it's like? Do you remember in the movie Catch-22? And the John Boyd character, Milo, gave chocolate-covered cotton to people to eat. We're using chocolate-covered cotton. Well, that's what you have to eat it. I mean, that's what you're gonna do. In other words, something that's unpalatable, but you have to take it anyway. So the point is that, okay, what can be done? What's the solution? I don't know. That's your job. That's what we elected you for. But I can't see that anything that's trying to spend millions of dollars trying to get people here and trying to get businesses and just to build vacant stores and to have people live there, which is great. But that population is not going to solve the problem. I don't think that's going to solve the problem at all. To overcome the shifting of half the town away to Yorktown, to wherever, Seven Bridges School is. And that's what I'm saying, is that there's an insoluble problem, is what I view it. I'm very sorry to say.
Well, I think, I'm sorry, I interrupted, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I don't know if that's necessarily a fair comparison, whether or not all of us have seen Catch-22. I haven't, it's been a long time. It's not saying this is we're not saying you have to have residential here, you have to have commercial here, eat it, take it, or you don't get it. It's different than that. That's really not what's happening, because part of it is saying, all right, you're gonna have to have a 16-foot setback, for example, so that you can't have lot line to lot line. You're gonna have to have roofs pitched a certain way to limit, the view shed. There's going to be some conformity so that if someone does own it, as a matter of right, they can already go up 3 stories. Now we're gonna say, even if it's a matter of right, we're not gonna change that, you can still go up 3 stories, you can't just put some monolithic one stretch of the exact same roof line, the exact same building, so that there's some different in the contour, so it looks different, it's at least more appealing. But ultimately, it's what the market is going to bear. And to a certain extent, when I say we want to be in control of that, meaning the community and then just the developer coming in, sort of what happened in Chapel Crossing, saying this is what's gonna happen, and you don't really have much of a choice. So I don't know if that's a fair representation, and keep in mind too, there's a lot of land, as you know, that's downtown that is not private, there's also public land. If everyone on this board said we wanted to sell one of the parking lots or part of the parking lot, to put up, and then hopefully, this was our plan, around the park in the middle there would be 5-story buildings. Even if we all said, yes, let's do it, you and residents would have a right, as a permissible referendum, to say, no, we don't want that. And in fact, you've been here long enough, if you recall, half a dozen years ago or so, maybe longer, there was an issue about the lease for the train station restaurant. There was enough people up in arms about it, that this town came to vote out and change. That's nothing. That's nothing compared to what would happen. And for that matter, as you may or may not be aware, the train station is already zoned now light industrial. No one's rushing to make that build out light industrial. So what this is allowing us or affording us the opportunity is try to be proactive. It's certainly not a perfect answer. And I don't know if it's fair also to say that dog doesn't, let that sleeping dog lie, that dog don't, whatever expression you just used before, but, that dog don't hunt, I think is what you said. And I think the dog does hunt, but the problem is, if we don't do anything, it's destined to fail.
Agreed.
It will fail.
Something has to be done,
Because it's vacant now and doing nothing is not gonna make it
The town and
better.
everything, the town is just not conducive to, when I was reading, like I said, for the first time looking at this plan, and I was looking, I saw the architecture, with the plan, the samples of architecture. Are they trying, my first reaction was, in other words, are we now taking the Chapel Crossing model and making Chapel look like Chapel Crossing? The different types of architecture that we're trying to do. And and individual landlords, it struck me like that. I know that's not what you have intended, but my first reaction was, we're gonna make Chapel downtown like Chapel Crossing, but no.
I think we have to think out of the box, but also continue to listen, because that complacency and being stagnant, as you acknowledge, is not gonna happen.
Something has
And
to be
keep
done.
in mind, we are being guided by the comprehensive plan. No one wants to put, 60 people in a 20-person room. It's not feasible, and part of the environmental examination review, part of me, is going to make, we're gonna look into these things, because you can't, no one wants that at all. But we are saddled with, we're in a valley here, we're in a marsh
That's
from
right,
years
exactly.
ago.
Right.
We can only do so much. We
Right.
are who we are, but we have to at least optimize it, in my view.
Like, for example, I know it's too late now, just the other day, I went up to Katona, and the way they have parking on the street, the angled parking, makes for much more parking. And now, the way we have parking here, they want Chappaqua to be a walking town, it's never gonna happen, in my view. If they want it to be.
For those of you in the audience who can't see, he's smiling while he's saying that the dog doesn't bark, but, hunt, right? Sorry, bark, hunt, bite, I don't know, mixed metaphors. Sir, with all due respect, that is the goal of this town board, that is what we are after here, is to make this dog
I
hunt,
guess
to
what I
turn
guess-
this dog into a hunting
At
dog.
the end of-
And frankly, I don't think it's a dog today, so,
Right,
but,
but you don't
and
wanna
so
turn
we
it-
could
you don't wanna turn it-
quibble
turn it
on
into a
that,
dog,
but,
yeah.
really
But it's a
what-
question of money, this is my question, is terms of, is there gonna be like enormous sums of money to be spent on, and the return on it, and maybe nothing will ultimately become of it, in the theory of, well, we have to do something, so let's spend a lot of money and try to see if it's gonna work. I hope it's not that.
It's
I
not
do have to
that.
hope that, that's certainly
Yeah.
not that, that's
And
no
again,
one's
the
goal.
town's not doing the development.
Correct.
It's the significant amount of the real estate is owned by private landowners. So it would be up to them to decide if they wanted to build, and if they saw a financial feasibility in adding more retail to their bottom floor and maybe adding another story of residential. It's really up to them. If they think they're not gonna be able to get rents or leases, they're not gonna spend the money to
Well,
enhance their property that way.
So this whole,
So the
okay.
town's not doing any developing.
It's just that, I mean, just, you know, I'm glad to see that we don't have pie in the sky, that we're gonna do something that's gonna be a success. I think success is so far away, sadly, that I'm not putting my hopes up for that anyway, but, and then you have, how many different landlords are there, and people have to make their own decisions.
It could be that these landlords decide to work together because there's a better value to them as a possibility. And there's a particular building owner in town who knows that he may have the opportunity, or in fact can, as a matter of right, go up. He doesn't want to go up. And, you know, he's staying at one story. So I think your points, I shouldn't even say relatively speaking, I think some of your points are very fair and reasoned. But I also think if you take the time to see what we're doing, nothing's going to be perfect. We can't promise that. But we're trying to figure out a way to move it forward. Whether that makes it 42% better or 24% better, I don't know. And you're right, we're not gonna be the same probably walkability as some other communities just by our geography, frankly.
Correct.
But we can still be walkable, it's just a different definition. There's more space now than there was before, and the spring and the summer, now that we're all done, it'll be, I think, a vastly different community over time than it was 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Or for that matter, 40.
But, I mean, do you see my point, that the Seven Bridges School, well, I won't call it the death knell, but that killed, that.
Can't change the past.
I know, it killed the town, it killed the town. It's not your fault, because that's the school district's fault.
It's always the school district.
So I'd like to thank you for your.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. We have Philip Halub. Did I pronounce your last name? Halub.
Philip Holub, hi. I've written a letter because I'm not a great public speaker and I didn't want to get off course. I wanted to make a defined point. All right. I'm an architect that works locally in Westchester County. My wife Rosie and I purchased our home in Chappaqua 2 years ago, so we've only been here, we're new residents. We have 2 children, four-year-old boy Edgar and a 1.5-year-old girl Annabelle, very cute. We're relatively recent residents, but this is significant because, God willing, we and our children will be here in 20 years' time to see the outcomes of this rezoning. We're going to be around for a long time and we will see what will actually happen. And so stay focused. Also, I'm not fundamentally opposed to the rezoning and the potential future developments. I am concerned that the town proposal does not do enough to promote the construction of high-performance, sustainable buildings that address the exponentially growing issues of climate change. The board is in a unique position to drive the development of an energy-efficient project that the town and its residents can be proud of for generations to come. Meeting the requirements of the New York State Energy Conservation Code of today is not enough. We're proposing to develop downtown in a significant way that will last for generations. It has to be more. Developers on the site should be required to meet LEED Platinum or Passive House standards. Passive house buildings are the future. They are buildings that generate the same amount of energy as they use. And it seems crazy now, but they utilize the latest insulation and HVAC and energy production technologies to leave no carbon footprint. Residential buildings meeting the Passive House standard are being successfully developed in New York City. Chappaqua should be forward-thinking and mandate high-performance Passive House buildings into their new code. The board have a unique opportunity to drive a shift in the regional development paradigm towards an energy-efficient buildings of the highest order. I really would like to. I didn't see it anywhere on the scoping. Sure. It was sustainable. It was energy usage. I remember you had the points up last week, and nowhere did I see anything that addressed climate change, sustainability, building performance. It just seemed to me like anyone could come in. I encourage the town to hire a specialised sustainability consultant to collaborate with the current group of professionals writing the code. There may be someone that claims to have credentials, but someone that's uniquely involved in developing sustainability and to assist in writing the code and say, what can the town do? The town should mandate the highest performance-based codes for any future developments, especially for the sites where the largest developments occur, i.e. over the current train station parking lots and all the land that's public, because I feel like that's where the biggest developments, and I understand that I also have I don't want to inhibit people on the local residents to be able to build up on their properties by mandating them out of anything that's feasible, but when big developers come to town, they should be held to a different to a higher standard. Meeting the high standards of Passive House should not be negotiable for future developers. There should be no loopholes for them to be able to utilize to gain waivers and variances to like greenfill with Tesla chargers, and they should strictly adhere to a high level, whether it's a lead credential, whether it's a Passive House credential. I mean, this is a consultant would be able to assist you in what all these things mean and what it would what impact it would have on the development, and there may be a certain percentage that they have to meet. Again, a consultant will be able to. I'm not going to go into like my theories on that, but Chappaqua has the potential to become a differentiator in the region, a town that promotes sustainable developments reflective of the environmental concerns of its citizens. Our progressive, environmentally conscious town, which I see solar panels, Teslas everywhere, people are very conscious of this, should hold developers to a high standards. If they want to come to Chappaqua, they should be prepared to make landmark buildings that will stand the test of time and not contribute to the decline of our environment. Buildings that are beautiful on the inside, not just on the outside. I encourage the town to mandate energy efficient buildings that we can all be proud of for generations to come. I really think that this is an important issue that I didn't see addressed, and I would like the town to at least look at it. And I think it will actually help the town to to deliver the project to the public. If we can say that as you drive into town, these are some of the cleanest buildings in Westchester. We've really, in 20 years' time, we'll look back at them and say, hey, we did something that was ahead of its time then, instead of these big giant, whatever they are, 5, 4, 3 stories. People, I really think it's an important point, and I feel like it's my duty as a new resident and a citizen to really bring this point to light, and I hope that the town can at least look at it and consider the proposal seriously.
Bill, thank you for articulating that extremely well.
I will email a letter and I can.
So,
Thank you.
And I'm sure Sabrina and the rest of the board will correct me if I'm off. So, while what we're talking about, what we're really talking about is the generic draft EIS statement. However, when it comes to the form-based code, that's much more about zoning as opposed to building codes, which is what you're talking about. And I'm in full agreement with you that we should go and take a look at our building codes, and to go and look at high-performance sustainable buildings and energy-efficient buildings and LEED credentials and so forth. But I believe this is something that I think we should and we've discussed this, in passing, but we do need to take a look at our building codes well before this anything of this nature gets approved.
Yeah, I just want to bring it up because I don't want to slip through the cracks. That suddenly the code is done, the consultants have been paid out, and then you're now presenting this. I just feel like there should be, especially for some of the bigger sites, just simply saying it has to look like this, and then somewhere probably say meet New York State energy code, because every building in New York State. I just don't think that's enough. I think the town has the power, especially for some of the bigger sites, to actually say that the buildings that do go there should have a higher level of energy efficiency for the future, not for today, because you're proposing to change, the downtown, the typology forever. It's never going to go back. It's like, you've got these pictures out here. No one can probably remember what. I think that it's going to end up looking like Scarsdale and Bronxville with that level of development. But it has the potential, and sure, it's all colonial looking and it's nice and quaint, but it changes the landscape forever. And in 20 years, 50 years time, these buildings should be still of a high sustainable order, when instead of us looking back and looking the way we do at brutalist architecture and say, oh, look at this giant concrete edifice, gets, we use a lot of energy. I just think that if the buildings function well, they will be beautiful, just not only on the outside, but and I know that this is a zoning, I understand zoning, but I just feel like this code is very overarching, and there should be something, whether it's in the code or whether the town looks at their building proposals in relation, because these developers are going to come, they're going to eat it.
So
Of course
you'll
they're
be
gonna-
happy to know that the scoping document does talk about effects on the use and conservation of energy resources, which does go a bit to what you've discussed, talking about identifying and describing types, amounts, sources of energy, and any measures to reduce energy demands, specifically detail strategies to mitigate contributions to climate change and adapt to the effects of climate change. We can potentially go a little more into that, and I do think it's really important.
I think it's really important for the future, and I think that in 20 years' time, I think the town, if we do something like this, I mean, it gets like having a new development that's LEED Platinum. I mean, it will really boost the image of the town.
I don't think anyone disagrees with you, but just some of the points that were made, I think Jason said it. A large piece of that is going to be found or born from the building code, as opposed to the zoning. Although there's a marriage between the two, and it's certainly a piece of it, a large piece also will be in that building code to insist on certain standards.
I mean, Sabrina, can you speak to that actually? Because what Jason and Jeremy have now said is consistent with the messaging I've been delivering on this as well. But I am curious because it has came up this morning, it came up right now, and it's something that the Downtown Working Group has discussed. It's obviously something that Bill and Keiko Spade have come to us and requested that we begin examination of. So my question to you is our understanding that the sort of stretch goals that NYSERDA has identified and the changes that we would want to make to our green building code to be able to adopt the sorts of standards that Philip has raised today, is that something that we would do as a parallel process to the form-based code, or are there opportunities to bake those standards into the code, the zoning ordinance itself?
You can do both. It was a decision made by this board earlier that process in relation to the green building code should be examined separate from the form-based code. As it is written now, it refers to those green building standards. The green building standards, the passive house standards, which everyone thinks are a really good idea, are within the green building code. And Bill was going to come in and present to you changes, and we were going to work at the same time with changing the green building code that is referenced as part of the form-based code. That doesn't say you can't incorporate green building standards in the form-based code. We had just learned about the stretch code. We received information on the stretch code. Philip is speaking about going above and beyond what the state requires. I know that the stretch code is intended to carry us through the new green building standards that the state is looking at promulgating. I have asked my staff to look into the cost of that. There's a different threshold of expense in construction, residential versus commercial, and what that range would be. I think off the cuff, residential is anywhere from $3,000 to $19,000, and there's single-family home. When it comes to commercial or more dense residential, you get into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm not sure, you may be able, Philip, to speak to the expense of passive house construction. I cannot. Right, and the question is that threshold, and as a requirement, as a board, what are you looking to regulate? What we can regulate based off of existing standards and policies? How does that become formulated into law, and what is the cost differential? And those are all things that you as a board need to understand before you change laws.
Okay, and if what our consultants are looking at is in part driven by the economics of what property owners and potential developers what would be economically feasible
The
for them to
cost-benefit
build.
analysis.
Precisely.
Yes.
If that's one of the things that they're looking at, then wouldn't this be a critical input to that?
Absolutely,
If we're
which is
making
why
a-
we're incorporating it into the scope, absolutely.
And is the way it's described in the scope today inclusive of all the points that Philip raised today?
I will amend it further based on the points that Philip is raising today.
Good,
Yeah.
good. And then I think we just need to think about whether it makes sense from a policy perspective to have the language embedded within our code, or if we're looking to do a sort of standalone.
Off the cuff.
Yeah.
Off the cuff, you have development throughout the community. Single-family homes or residential districts, all of that comes in for a building permit. If you embed it only in the form-based code, it will only apply to the area of the form-based code,
Correct,
which
but I
is
think we also
why,
have a unique opportunity, as Philip's identified and
Absolutely,
spoken to tonight,
it-
to require something of development here in the hamlet.
absolutely. Again, you have, there's many different ways to implement and to execute. Absolutely. You'll have some choices before you.
Just to clarify my position, I don't want to make life, I'm not suggesting to make life difficult for property owners, and there has to be some sort of way that someone that has a shop front on Main Street, if they want to build up, it shouldn't be too onerous for them to do that. But when you've got a giant multinational coming in to buy out the parking lot and they're going to build whatever is in the renderings there, they should be held to a different standard because they don't care. They're wealthy companies. If they can't make it work this
And
year,
just so
they'll
you,
make
I mean,
it
just so
work
you're aware, I mean, what we're anticipating, at least initially, is not a multinational corporation coming
Correct,
and
but if the
building
mon- if the
a
money's there-
train station parking lot.
You know, I know, but the
Dream
mon-
big, but, you know, we're
could happen,
probably
but you're
looking at
doing-
individual property owners, we're probably looking at local developers, where,
Yeah.
you know, the scale of what will be done initially is not on.
Parking lot's gonna
yeah.
be expensive, so like, you know, John, the local developer, isn't gonna, you know, I mean, I just wanna I don't wanna talk, I mean, we can talk about it all day and it's all conjecture about what's gonna happen, but I feel like if Silverstein properties come up from New York because they're like, so it suddenly makes sense to just build out this thing and just have everyone go into the local schools, I want them to have some sort of responsibility to the environment, to the community.
No one disagrees.
And it's just by saying, you know, that, oh, they need to preserve some trees, that's like, there are actually things that they can do to, tangible benefits to the environment, to our community, that we can mandate, I think, into this code potentially, so. Anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just to, this will be explored in the EIS. It will be given to you so you will understand its relationship to the various levels of development that could occur underneath the form-based code, both on public and private property. So you'll be able to make decisions that make sense for our building codes and our form-based code.
Excellent, okay, that's great,
Anyway,
thank you.
thank you.
Thanks.
I'll leave it. I'll email the letter, but I'll give it.
Thank you.
my signed copy.
Chuck Napoli.
Chuck, you can't go twice.
Start the music. Does your dog bite? I like dog. So I'm gonna just, this is my favorite topic, and it's about the form-based code and the public workshop process. And the Form-Based Code Institute has guidance for generating a detailed physical plan that underlies the actual code. And you get a sense of what that might be possible. You saw the pictures of Chappaqua Crossing, and all the buildings were laid out, the walkways were laid out, the heights were laid out, the berms. That was all kind of like an interesting plan. And if you wanted to create a new code, you could create a code around that particular image. The question is, we need to do an image for our hamlet, of which we can then evaluate each and every piece of it. We could learn how many kids are gonna be in school, we could learn how many apartments we can fit here, we could learn how many cars there are gonna be, and the traffic times and the shared parking. There's so much you can do with just a quick, simple plan. And so what has been omitted so far from the coding is the wisdom of the community. I like that guy, and the exploration of alternative concepts, because we haven't done any of that. Maximum community participation is missing. And this all goes to community character and the process of working out that plan that we all can agree on. And of course, the physical plan. So here, first you do is you generate the plan. Second thing is you write the code. And I just have to tell you one thing. The comprehensive plan, which we hear so much about, in the Chappaqua Business District's future growth and economic development at this writing rests on the foundation of the public engagement in 2014. That's when we had 250 people total meet at different times, 6 or 7 or 8 different venues, and everybody contributed what they thought they wanted. And we were all part of that, I think. Well, on page 61 of that report, there's like list of what everybody wanted in this town. On page 61, they were talking about housing, and there's a lot of talk about housing in the comprehensive plan. But on page 61, it said, create housing within walking distance of the train station with parking when necessary. That was one of them. 3 people said that's what we want. 3 people. And then there was use the train station parking lot for more housing. Out of the 252 people, one guy said that. And it kind of like one guy out of 252 said, we want housing in the train station parking lot. And I don't know where or how it got to be 1,000 units downtown possible. I've heard that before. But I don't think one guy had that kind of impact to direct the entire comprehensive plan into a TOD development, because PACE did not start off with a TOD development. So if you look at the process, I want you to look at process. PACE came up with getting the answers, then they were asked for another $20 or $30 or $40,000 to update the master plan with a TOD component. Nobody in the original group of the 252 people knew about TOD back in 2014. Nobody. And I think we should bring it back to the community again and pick up where we left off back in 2014, November, and say, let's reconvene the public meeting, have one more public meeting, and then show them. You got to show them what we're thinking about. You got to create a plan before you go any further and nibble around the edges of what you're calling a form-based code, because you can't have a code without a plan.
Do you think that the general, well, there's been many outreach attempts, there's been public meetings, there's been emails, there's been Facebook, there's been by the school, by Bell, and there's been misinformation sent out an email blast and things going in mailboxes. And look what people are here tonight. Not that many people.
Yeah.
And that's, at some point, I think Warren, you may have mentioned it, shame on me if I'm not involved and I don't know. And I'm not shaming anyone, but we're gonna continue to make efforts and continue to reach out and continue to try to engage. Maybe a mailing goes out on a postcard to say, people, get involved and understand what's going on. But I also I think some of it is different. I mean, when you're talking about the comprehensive plan, Chuck, you're talking about much more broad concepts. I don't think, and I certainly could be wrong, and maybe that's why people aren't showing up to the same extent, that people want to argue whether a 16-foot or a 14-foot or an 18-foot setback is the right answer. I'm using that as just an example. So it's a little bit lost in the weeds.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So that is a big piece of it. And this gentleman's point before, Philip, I think, he has a valid point, and maybe we have to look, and we've been trying to listen to what people say and make sure that it's incorporated. So we're going to continue to reach out. But one thing that I find, I don't know what the right term is, but when we get stuck on the train station parking lot and the public space and the certain heights of certain locations, some of it is already as a matter of right that can be done that way.
Yeah.
And no one that I'm aware of on this board, and tell me if someone could speak up if I'm wrong, is looking to sell the train station parking lot to make housing that I'm aware of, and certainly no one's trying to sell it prefers current uses of a light industrial either. It's
Well,
just.
you know what, maybe we need some industrial in town to bring in the jobs.
So if you want to run on that we should make a light industrial downtown, then God bless.
We used to have, we should have a little bottle factory, a little perfume factory, I mean, or bring that other thing here and put it in the parking lot. But again, I hear all what you're saying, and I know the effort Tiffany took when she created the outreach process. It was, I mean, I did this in Peekskill, and it was like, it took months and months and months, and letters upon letters upon letters, and to get people to commit to sitting down for a Saturday afternoon. I mean, it's almost impossible. It's the hardest thing to do. But it's something that you can't replace with having somebody stand up and tell you something without something to react to. So I'm saying that all we have to do is take off from where we left off in 2014. And I told you last time that there were 4 concepts all laid out. We could right now say each one of those concepts could be evaluated. You could count how many apartments, matter of fact, they tell you.
But with the form-based code, it doesn't work that way. We're not saying it's gonna be 12 apartments here, 30 apartments there. And
We
part
don't
of-
own the
yeah,
land.
Yeah, it's the development and the best use, and that developer is going to determine, and when I say developer, that sounds like
It
a
might
scary
not be
thing.
housing, right?
That may be the guy who owns a particular building is developer. I mean, I shouldn't be using that term, saying, hey, let's join neighbors, let's put this together and build it up. So they're going to build what the market in part can bear. And also being cognizant of other regulations we put in place, for example, the parking and the traffic issues we examined. So.
You have to just show me a plan of what you're talking about.
Well, how do we show a plan if it's not ours? It's not this abstract,
What-
we
what-
want to
it's
have
your
a swimming
code.
pool.
It's a new law, and that law, you should have, you should have.
the law
a
does.
Chuck, you attended the public sessions that were held last summer here at Town Hall where we
Well,
had.
that was 2 meetings, yeah.
Boards posted, and folks gathered around them and provided input and.
Well, I know, you're being so nice and all of that, but guess what? I mean, that was nothing more than a pretty picture that had no relationship to the number of cars or even where the cars were parked.
And that's
Yeah.
that's what comes next. That's what we're doing as a part of the
Yeah, the
environmental
environmental impact statement,
assessment. No,
Well,
Chuck,
I'm really confused because you're writing a plan, to me, you're writing a plan in a vacuum.
So Chuck,
Yeah.
I adore you, and you came this morning, and you spoke at some length this morning, and you've come this evening.
You told me I have to
Are
sit
you
down.
coming home with me tonight? Should I give Christian a call and let him know? But in all seriousness, we do want to, if you have a question that you want us to.
Yeah, tell me your
include in
plan,
the
I want to see
scope,
it,
in
that
the-
you're writing the code about. It's that simple. You have to have a plan before you can write a code. So I would like to see what your plan is, if you have one. And I don't know how it's possible to write a code with all of the details in 16 different properties and without a plan. And we do have zoning setbacks now, or, they're 10 foot. Nobody paid any attention to them. Everybody got variances. And we do have height limitations right now, and big deal. But at least, we could show what that would look like to the people, and then the people could also decide.
Well, we do show that. That's what so we were required to show the maximum build-out, not that what's going to happen, to be clear. That's been sold too by misinformation, that's what's gonna happen. But that maximum build-out is we have to show what, in theory, could happen if we sold all of our public
Fine.
land.
Well, then
the
show
public
it.
agreed. No,
Where-
we don't
how
want to
come
show
we can't see it?
We can show it again.
I haven't seen it since last summer.
Fine, well, that's
And-
just from the opposite.
Show it.
And this is what will come back in our draft EIS. And so, I know stay
Okay.
tuned is not what
So
you're
here's
looking
my
for, but
question,
stay
can you show me a
tuned.
plan and
Come
you say
back.
you will? You will show the plan.
We will show you the maximum build-out scenario and the renderings associated with that. It is not a development plan. We had this conversation this morning, so I'm not gonna.
It's a zoning plan, I guess, a three-dimensional zoning plan. And it is all about 3 dimensions, but you will show a plan, and I just think that would be happy, I'd be happy with that.
Yeah, we're gonna go in circles. There is no plan to show it because we can't say to a private individual, call it a developer, call it Bob who owns a particular building, that this is what you're gonna have to do now. It's just not conceivable, and we're not even there because we still have other studying environmental-wise to do. So you're asking, I think, Chuck, a disingenuous question. Your issue is not disingenuous. I understand your point, but I think that what you're asking for, it can't be. That's why you're asking it, because it can't be provided, because we can't say, we hope that this person and this person are gonna combine here, knock down here. It's not gonna work. We can't control that message.
So, but you can tell them what to do, though,
Well, laws tell people what to do all the time, do they not?
with the code. Yeah, you're telling them, yeah, I don't want.
They can't do, I guess.
I don't want to beat it to death, I really don't. I just, if you have a plan that you are gonna show eventually, I'd just like to see it sooner than later. Because if you already showed it once, then I think maybe you should show it to us again.
We can show it as much as we want, that's not our
And,
plan.
and, you know, I also, I know that you know this, but for those who are watching and don't know, you know, all of the documentation that has been produced as a part of this project is available on our website.
Well, yeah, I know.
You can certainly go back and you can take a look once again at the renderings that were done last summer that we received comments on. You know, there's quite a bit that's been.
I think you just ought to keep that up in front of everybody's mind, because that's what you're shooting for, that's what you're going to.
No, that's not what we're shooting for.
You're shooting to allow that kind of three-dimensional spaces. We're creating spaces with this code. We're creating spaces in between buildings. That's what form-based is, not necessarily the use of the
We're creating
code.
possibilities, we're not
So show me-
predicting or prescribing.
So can you please put a possibility in 3 dimensions so people could see it and not keep it as a ghost ship, you know, like it's all words?
I'm sure you'll be here when it comes in, when the results of our EIS come in.
Say it again?
I said, I'm sure you'll be here when the results of our EIS come in, and we can share that with you, and we'll look forward to getting your comments on that.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Okay, that's everyone who signed up on the sheet. Vinnie?
Hi, Vinnie Milazzo, Chapel Village Market, also a landowner. I must have missed the meeting. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. It was 2 weeks ago? The first meeting on the form-based?
First company.
Yeah, Sabrina was nice and invited me to meet with all the people in the meeting, so that was very informative. Sorry. I really don't have any specifics as a retailer for 45 years and a building owner. I think residential near a train station makes a lot of sense. You know, we don't have any, like I said, I don't have any specifics. So I saw on the meeting from 2 weeks ago, and I saw that picture, that 2 to 4 stories and 2 to 5. I must have missed that entire plan. When was that like decided, or what was that original plan?
So the process on developing a form-based code kicked off in May of 2019. And we have been working on revisions to drafts since probably last summer, I would say, was when the first one was in its infancy. And where we are right now in terms of the process, do you have the process slide? You wanna go? Yeah. Do you wanna watch it? I can't read that.
That's right, stuff sits, it's just stupid.
This is the secret process.
I don't wanna-
but
this is
he's
the
saying
secret
you're
process?
on the
You're
other
right,
process?
you're right, you're
Hang
right.
on.
The time, yeah.
Hang on. People at home don't have a problem hearing me.
But Vinnie, nothing's been decided.
No.
This is kind of where
That-
we are now in the current draft, and we said, okay, if this is the draft, now let's study it and see what the environment, we said, what's being proposed definitely has environmental impacts. Let's now study them and see what the potential impacts are, which may cause us to completely change that draft or to somewhat change that draft. So that's not set in stone. That's the draft that's currently being studied.
No, I remember meeting with John Nolan and Pace and all those things, that felt like so many years ago, like I can't even remember. Obviously, it's impossible for anyone to figure out all the different stores and who wants to improve their building. So, I mean, I love Chuck, but there's no way that unless you go and talk to every store owner and ask them at that particular time that any possibility they want to increase their building size.
Do you want to increase your building
Well,
size?
it certainly makes my building worth more if I'm gonna do it, or 5 years from now. I mean, you can't get any closer to the train, you know, so that has, you know, a huge impact, you know,
Vinnie, you did meet with the consultant last summer.
yep.
You
No, I
came
remember
in, yeah, and you met with the consultant last summer. John Nolan was several years
No,
before
that was Pace. I know John personally, he's a very good person.
Right, Pace was
different
before,
comprehensive
exactly. You most recently met with the consultant
Yeah.
team who have been helping us with the legislation.
But like to some of us that come here for years and years, they kind of get a little bit mixed up.
what plan.
We all get
I don't blame you.
We're talking about dogs, we're talking about.
And not for nothing, I mean, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to move it forward. We're trying not to go backwards in time and to relitigate and discuss what it is that we want to have happen in the hamlet. We know what we want to have happen in the hamlet. We know that we want to diversify our housing types, and we want to add, more affordable housing, whether that's affordable in the sort of government definition of affordable, or affordable as in people can afford to live here. But we know, because we've had all of these past outreach sessions, so we know that that's a goal. We know it's a goal to create the kind of hamlet that becomes a destination for people, so that there are things that you can do after 8 p.m. at night, whether it's to go out for a date night or grab an ice cream cone. There are things that we're trying to accomplish through the process that we're doing right now that are built off of those conversations that we've been having for years. But the idea of this town board is not to rewind 6 years and start all over again, but to move forward, because the reality is that if we want to help our businesses survive in this economy with the challenges that you have in front of you today, with the construction you've just had to go through, with Chappaqua Crossing opening just a mile up the road from you, if we want to help these businesses survive and thrive into the future, we have to take some action. We can't just sit down and talk about what to do.
Excellent, without a doubt. It's going to be a long process, and it's very hard to, figure out all these different things. So maybe if I can meet with you maybe one day and
Absolutely.
get me up to speed. I must have missed some things, so thank you.
Absolutely, very happy to do so.
But his question was, where'd you get that plan? Yeah, I just
I
saw
think he
that
spoke
today,
for
actually.
himself.
Someone posted on pictures, the first thing I seen. Where'd that come from?
Hi, I'm Margaret Ferguson. I have a few comments. What Chuck says makes a lot of sense. I think, I know there's a lot to be done, but what's going on now, the plan that's such as it is very amorphous. I tried to explain it to my husband. He had a very hard time understanding what all those words meant. A very hard time. And it took a lot of looking at things. He did the color-coded map of the different stories. And then once he started to piece it together, he was really shocked. And he asked about the commute, and he said they're going to mess with the commute. If it's just construction, don't mess with the commute. And he said it repeatedly, and I've never seen him so upset. And he said, if this goes through, we sell our house, because it'll take a couple $100,000 off the value of our house, because people move to Chappaqua because it's good commuter parking and a commuter distance. We moved here then when we were both commuting. We could get passes for 2 cars to commute. He said, don't mess with the commute. And I mentioned that, he said, where are the current spaces going to go that could be built on? And you do have to assume those spaces are going to be built on to make wise long-term decisions in the parking lot. And where are the additional spaces for the people who are going to be living there? I said, I think it's a garage. Well, where's the garage going to go? Is that going to be staring out at South Greeley? That's not nice to look at. I'd rather look at a parking lot. And am I going to have to walk to the garage and spend X number of minutes getting my car up to the 5th floor or the 4th floor, and then X number of minutes getting it down, and then walking to the train station? Before I know it, I'll have another 45 minutes added to my day between getting to and from the garage and the train station. And he said, and even if it's just construction, we've just been through construction. He said when he gets there in line at 7:30 in the morning, the traffic's backed up way beyond the duck pond, way beyond Kip Street at 7:30 in the morning, and it goes even further. And he said, it's going to go on for years. If it's said to be 2 years, it's going to be 5 years. He said, this will be a nightmare. Don't mess with the commute. And he really was upset about it, and he had a very hard time visualizing this. People aren't getting it. The few people that I've had a chance to talk to and explained a few things, I said, a 4 or 5, I'm not sure if it's 4 stories or 5 stories, could go where Pizza Station is. And that has effects like blocking sun and making streets darker. And you start to piece together what it's like if it's fully built out. And you have to assume it's going to be fully built out. This board doesn't want to sell the train's parking lot, but you're not, good and bad, you're not going to be here the whole time this has consequences. And if you remember, on Conifer, it started with a board preceding all of you, a supervisor who really wanted that to happen and really wanted affordable housing there. And that was changed from industrial to something else. And that was the first of a sequence of steps that sent that project into reality. And people got very upset by it, and a lot of things got out of our control, but it's a taxpayer-funded project, among other things, and that's what, another thing that upset people, but it started with a change in zoning. So all it will take is a different board, a majority vote, to decide to sell a portion of public lands.
And then someone, I'm gonna interrupt just to make sure it's clear,
Yeah.
and then just as people were distraught over a lease in the community, if the community says, no, we don't want that.
Do you know how hard that was? I worked on that
was a
referendum.
lease, right? I'm saying that was a lease, so one
Right.
would assume.
You know
that-
how, I did it.
One would assume that if we, when I say we, whoever the board is, makes a determination to sell off the train station parking lot, or any other parking lot, or any public property for that matter, that the community is going to have strong visceral, just like you do now.
We have,
positions one
well,
way or another.
I'm upset because I think this plan is very amorphous and I don't even understand what we're talking about. I'm shocked to hear that it could be up to the developers to decide if they're putting in the train station parking lot. Is it 75% one bedroom or is it 50% three bedrooms? And the reason I'm shocked is because that has effect on how many kids go into the school system and how many cars you need. People live in apartment buildings at Stewart Place in Mount Kisco that's walking distance train station, and they're 2 7-story buildings. Everybody has a car there.
But you understand that if we were to develop the train station parking
Mm-hmm.
lot, we as a community, because that is public land that is owned not by the town board, but by everyone in this room, all of the residents of this town, if we wanted to sell and develop on that property, that would be subject to a public referendum.
Right, and I'm
which
telling you, I've
means
done
that
it.
you would have the opportunity to weigh in on any development plan.
You know how hard that
wants
was
to be built
when the
there
lease went for the
before
train
you
sta-
vote on it.
The
That's
lease,
what-
well, first of all.
And so, I take a little bit of exception of you coming here and accusing me as town supervisor of acting as though I were the supervisor at the time that
I
the
did not say
conifer
that. I said
development
all it will
was
take
being
is a town board where somebody wants something to happen at train station. I said nothing about
Because what this
you.
town board is trying to do is to fulfill what was laid out in the comprehensive plan. We did not come in with an agenda that said, we want to pass this form-based code and we're going to shove it down
The
the
people
throats of the people in this community. We inherited this project from the previous town board, and this administration has redoubled our efforts to do public outreach around this.
Listen.
And if you're saying you don't understand it, I appreciate you telling me that, because
I'm-
I will work
I'm
harder to
working
make
at
you
understanding it,
understand
but when I'm
But
tr-
don't come in here and tell me that I'm behaving as though I were the supervisor at the time the
I did not
conifer
say
was before
that.
the town board.
I did not say that. I said what it will take is a new town board where somebody, 3 members of a 5-member town board decide they want something to happen. That's what it'll take. Yes, we have a chance to do a permissive referendum. That's hard. Every contract, we're going to have to get signatures on every contract to sell or lease public land. That's what it's going to take. And that was very hard because I did it on the train station, and we succeeded. There was no vote, by the way. The town took back the contract approval. But we got more than enough signatures, but it was a lot of work, and it went down to grassroots effort. Now, I did not say anything about anybody on this town board, or even as the town board as the collective. I said, that's what it will take. That's what happened with Conifer as a starting point. And so you got a future here where you could end up, not you, I mean, we all have a future here where a lot of other people are going to be sitting on this town board. And it's going to take a majority vote to decide to enter into a particular lease or a particular sale. And yes, people can then go around and get a certain percentage of the number of people who voted in the last gubernatorial election, and they can get it on, and then the signatures have to be valid, and then they can force a referendum for every contract. That's a lot of work, and it's going to cause a lot of strife, and it's not a good picture. So if I came across as saying anything about anybody here, I did not mean it. I don't think I said it. I'm talking about what happened in the past, which was a disaster for a lot of reasons, and went on for years and years and years. And it did start with change in zoning, and it did start with a board that wanted something to happen.
I want to just follow up a little bit what you're saying. I commute down King Street every day, just like most people from one way or another. You're coming from the other side of town, but, I come down. And commute is a big piece of this. I don't think anyone moved here for a big parking lot, but they moved here for the bucolic nature of the community, relatively easy to get into the city. as a matter of right now, those buildings up King Street, you could tell your husband, if someone wanted to build up and go up 3 stories, they could go up and cause them that headache now. That's not changing. That's not changing. Still, 2 or 3 stories is 3 stories. Number one. Number two, the building which will be conifer, as you are certainly well aware, that is going to exceed the bridge over
I
the
know
sawmill.
that.
Right, no, I'm saying you're well aware. That's going to be the biggest building in Newcastle going forward, and certainly at least in the hamlet of Chappaqua. It's going to be the biggest building, and that's what you're going to see when you talk about aesthetic. That, better or worse, you like it, you don't like it, that's going to be the biggest. The buildings that are going to be potentially it's still in the works, no one's come and said this is exactly what's going to happen, are very limited in their locations. And I agree, I don't think the community wants all of a sudden a zealous developer to come in and start blowing up everything and building as much as he or she can. I don't expect that to happen, because you also keep in mind, what do you have is a bunch of small, realistically, you have a bunch of small, privately held plots. The only way something larger happens, if this, at least in the immediate, is if this town board were to say, we want to sell, and not enough people in the community object to it. So I appreciate some of the things you're saying, they are valid, and you're right, something happened with Conifer a long time ago, and it just took a life of its own with zoning, and it exploded. But that's not what's happening here, and I think some of what you're saying is more than, is alarmist, and almost, the sky is falling mentality, when that's not fair. It isn't, we were trying to make it better, trying to make it happen, and trying to make it work. But the fears of the example, the commuting problem, what's stopping anyone from building up now? They can do it now.
Well, is this going to
So-
facilitate the process? Aren't the changes in zoning going to take a lot of the complications in the process out of the way?
It certainly may do that, and also certainly may make sure that we don't have a hodgepodge of random properties going up in different sizes and make it look and feel and be nothing what anyone wants, and mandate that it has to be all residential, mandate it has to be all commercial.
No, but don't you have to
so
know how
now-
many cars are going to come in and
That's
how many students
right,
are going to come in
correct.
and have a handle if they were talking
Correct.
about 1 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms, because all of that matters?
Part of that is going
But
to.
also, if the idea is to attract developers, I mean, that's one of the foundational ideas of this change in zoning. It seems to me you want more developers to come in here. So when you say, tell my husband this or that, well, maybe the process is dissuading people now. Maybe tweaks in the process are a good idea. I think there's always efficiencies you can work on. But the idea, this plan is developer friendly, and you're being advised by a board that is 2 developers or landowners and 1 architect who works with developers. That's a board that wants this to happen. So I mean, the deck is leaning towards this happening in a developer friendly way. Okay, that may be what you want, but that's gonna bring a lot more activity into the town.
I think if anyone were to say that we are seeking to be a northern version of Scarsdale or White Plains, they would be misrepresenting. We are not looking to make this a town just so developers can come in and do what they please. We're trying to best ensure that we have some consistency, that we develop in a smart way. To what Philip said before, it may not be here now, but we're working on making sure it can be more green going forward. We're trying to be smart. You can't fit, to think that you could fit, like you said before, 60 people in a 20-person room, it can't happen. It's just not physically possible. No one's going to do that here. So you have valid concerns, and I don't mean any disrespect when I say to you, I think you're it comes across as much, and sincerely, I'm not saying that you are completely incorrect, but some of the things that you're afraid of coming in the future could happen now as a matter of right. So I'm glad that you're engaging us. We're trying to make it right. But certainly standing still is the wrong answer.
But there are alternatives to this plan. This plan is, in my view, I gotta get more in the details, is the wrong plan. It's not going to lead to I think something different could be put in place that could get positive results.
I ask that you please stay involved and continue to be involved. Truly, because anything you say, we may agree, we may disagree, but it's going to help us move that needle.
The questions that you sent to the town board that we reviewed were excellent. So, as you continue to
I
dig
hope you
into
do
the
listen. And
details-
as I said, I'm concerned. I really am not concerned about this board. But I've seen what happened in the past, and things happened that were very concerning. And it takes a majority vote for a lot of things to get approved in this town. And so I hope to be here in 20 years. I mean, you know, I've been here, I think, 30 years now, but I hope to be here in 20. But putting, there better be some real parameters on a whole bunch of things, because leaving decisions up to developers, I think, in significant part, is...
But I mean, just to, I don't mean to interrupt you, but just to that point, that's exactly what we're trying to do with this code. So on the one hand, yes, we're notifying developers that Chappaqua is open for business, that we want to seek out development in our hamlet, smart development. And when I say smart development, I say that because it's not a carte blanche to come in and do whatever it is that you want to here. We have a form-based code that is very prescriptive about what can and can't happen and what those forms will look like. So in fact, we actually give ourselves a level of protection that we don't have today. And that's
Well, you know, a developer's motivation is to make money, right? I mean, that's got to be at the top of the list. And the people who live in this community, that's really not the top of the list. I mean, business owners like Vinny, who owns this building, you know, mazel tov to Vinny. I hope you make money off that someday. He and his family's been here a long time. But a developer who comes in and wants to build a multi-story building at Citibank is going to make a cost-effective decision in a prominent location, and they will be able to, maybe they can do it now to 3 stories. I don't have a handle on the difference in just one example, but they're going to go for profit. And, you know, that is not the same type of interest as the community at large. And, you know, the handful of property owners, some of whom are on the advisory board to the town, you know, who are going to be impacted by this, have a different set of considerations, I would say, than people who live here, work here, and send their kids to school here. And I just think that it's got to be as tight as humanly possible. I agree. There can be ways to make things go smoother and faster, and there always can. Every homeowner who's tried to get something through understands that it takes longer than you want, and it can be aggravating. But I am thankful for the role of the ARB and the Planning Board and the Zoning Board of Appeals and our building inspector. And that poor man's going to be overwhelmed if it falls mainly on his shoulders. I mean, I'm thankful for the public outreach process, the public participation process, the public meetings, and the chance to comment on a specific project and the feedback that those boards allow. I'm very grateful for those volunteers and all they do, because I think they are really at the forefront of protecting how our community looks and functions, and listen, and they listen to the residents. And I don't know where listening to the residents is in this picture. As this plan, I've heard you say that it's going to be a 40, you know, this is for our community as it unfolds in over 40 years. I don't know where listening to the residents comes in. And, you know, it is a wonderful idea to get smart development here. I just think there are forces at play that it won't work that way. But anyway, thank you for your time.
Is there anyone else? Okay. Do we need a motion to close the scoping session, or?
My understanding is that the board was going to close the public hearing on the scoping, but leave it open for public comments until February 21st at noon. So is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Is everyone coming out? You're welcome to stay. We have more exciting things on the agenda tonight.
I have a lot of resolutions.
Yeah,
How about 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
Bio.
Yeah.
Less than 6.
Okay, we're gonna take a 2-minute break.
I think you said bio break, because that was the
Yeah.
terminology, not to call him that. He said bio break.
We call it in my office too.
Thank you.
Thank you for staying with us. So the next thing that we have on our agenda this evening is an authorization to set a public hearing for our street opening permit local law. Ed, can you give us a summary of what this is all about?
It is an
This is going to be an amendment to the town code to update our street opening regulations, which haven't been updated in quite some time. Best practices, a little bit of some explanatory content, if you will, in terms of what the Department of Public Works is going to require and is going to want to see. That's it in a nutshell.
Great. And these amendments will protect the town from having recently repaved and resurfaced roads be sort of torn up by other utility companies who are looking, or others who are looking to do work in the road. And when that happens, if that happens, they will be required to replace that surface and to bring it back to its original condition, such that we don't have, for example, what happened, and it's not in our municipality, but for those who travel along 117, sort of as you're coming from the north down towards the intersection with South Greeley, where work was done by a Con Ed contractor, and they really, when they went and resurfaced the road, left it in absolutely terrible conditions, actually in the town of Mount Pleasant, but that's exactly the kind of thing that we don't want to see happening moving forward. So we're very excited about making these changes and holding the utility companies accountable for making sure that our roads are in the best shape they can be. So the date that we're setting for that is March 10th, 2020. Do we have a motion to set the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next, we have a motion to set the public hearing for the vacant storefront registry.
So I know the board's workshop this. This is a local law to establish a place where the town can keep information about vacant storefronts, ownership, whether there's a realtor, and also there's going to be a small fee associated with the registry. The fee will be used in, I understand, the Chappaqua and Millwood hamlets to advance things like beautification, but the overriding purpose is to incentivize, encourage, spur property owners who are sitting on vacant storefronts in the hamlets to be more proactive and try to get those leased up.
And so we workshopped this at our last work session. There are sort of two major changes that were made that are in front of the town board for the version of this that we're intending to set for public hearing. The first is that at the excellent suggestion of Councilwoman Lisa Katz and the sort of concurrence from Councilman Jason Lichtenthal, we've expanded the focus of this to not only include the Chappaqua hamlet, but also the Millwood hamlet. So that's the first change that we made. And then also in response to some of the concerns raised by Councilwoman Lauren Levin, we've gone and further reduced the application fees associated with this, because our goal is really not to adopt fees and fines to penalize property owners who are unable to fulfill vacant storefronts, but really our goal here is to help property owners and to help potential small businesses learn about opportunities and vacancies within our two hamlets. And it should also just be mentioned that the fees are waived during the period of the moratorium for the Chappaqua hamlet, which is currently in place, and would be lifted at such a time that we pass our form-based code. So, that said, do we have a motion to set the public hearing for this?
So moved.
Second.
March 10th, 2020.
You so moved last time.
Oh, so moved.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Are we ready to
On
go?
to our resolutions.
Resolutions?
On my resolutions. They're on page 40. Oh, they're stapled to the packet. Keeping us on our toes.
Okay, Lauren. Two, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, right, there it is.
I was like, wait. I move to approve payment of claims in the amount of $219,727.65 listed on the summary pre-check writing report and detailed voucher detail reports, all dated February 10th, 2020. Checks will be issued and mailed to each claimant listed on Wednesday, February 12th, 2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to accept the following monthly reports for January 2020, Town Clerk, Court Clerk, Development Department, and Receiver of Taxes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Vote.
I move to adopt the following minutes, January 21st, 2020 work session and January 28th, 2020 Town Board meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I would punt this to Lisa, so it's a good move on your part. I try to fool you. I move to adopt the following resolution. Whereas there is presently pending before the New York State Supreme Court, County of Westchester tax certiorari proceeding titled as addressed therein. Whereas now therefore, pardon me, be it resolved that the town board authorize the settlement of this 2018 proceeding so as to adjust the contested 2018 assessment of tax for the reflected parcel as follows. Be it further resolved that the council for the town of Newcastle, Keenan Bean, together with the town administration, is hereby authorized to undertake such actions as necessary to effectuate the settlement, including the execution and submission of the consent judgment of the court for the purposes of entry.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. I move to authorize approving ELQ Industries change order overruns 39A through 39J in the total amount of $138,470.24 as reflected below.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I move to authorize the purchase of the arrest booking system, RICI Live Scan, for a total cost of $19,600, which includes on-site installation, training, and a 12-month warranty with 24/7 backup support. This purchase was included in the 2020 IT infrastructure budget.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I move to authorize the purchase of 2 sets of black fluted solar double-sided rectangular rapid flashing beacon systems.
Wow.
Say that 10 times
Yeah,
fast.
right.
Where each system consists of 2 poles per system from Tapco Safe Travels in Wisconsin for a total cost of $12,790.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move to renew the annual service and support contract with D&I Laboratories Audiovisual Systems, effective for 1 year, starting January 1st, 2020, ending December 31st, 2020, at the rate of $7,500. This contract will cover all the necessary software maintenance, on-site visits, remote and technical support required to resolve covered issues, as well as support for the existing theatrical lights.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resuscitating that contract.
And I move to authorize the use of town property by Chappaqua Girl Scout troops for the sale of cookies at the train station on March 6th to March 22nd, 2020, weeknights from 4 to 8 p.m. and Pocket Park during the same dates from 10 to 6 p.m., 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., and furthermore from March 27th to May 10th, 2020, as dictated by sales.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to authorize the posting of office assistant automated systems, Spanish speaking, for the assessor's office.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to authorize the posting of and hiring of a part-time intermediate clerk in the assessor's office to be effective March 2nd, 2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to authorize the hiring of Samantha Straits to the position of Animal Warden Parking Enforcement Officer within the Police Department at an annual salary of $46,302.24, effective February 24th, 2020, with a probationary period of 52 weeks, contingent upon the successful completion of a pre-employment medical exam and background check.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to authorize the issuance of bids for the 2020 T-shirt contract for the staff of the Department of Public Works and the Recreation Department.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Just read the first one, and
Okay.
jump to the
Last,
workforce.
okay. I move to adopt the following resolution accepting a letter of credit and 2 cash bond agreements Whereas by resolution adopted on June 17, 2015, the Town of Newcastle Planning Board granted an application by Willwood Holding LLC, Mavis Tire Supply LLC for a site development plan amendment, wetlands permit, tree removal permit, and stormwater pollution prevention plan for a parking lot expansion at 358 Sawmill River Road, whereas
Now therefore be resolved.
and now therefore be it resolved that the town board hereby accepts the letter of credit and authorizes the supervisor of the town of Newcastle to execute all documents as may be necessary for the purpose of effectuating this resolution. Be it further resolved that the town board of the town of Newcastle hereby accepts the aforementioned cash bond agreements and authorizes the supervisor or her duly authorized designatee to sign the cash bond agreements along with all other documents necessary to effectuate the purpose of this resolution.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I move to adopt the following resolution, whereas the town's 2017 comprehensive plan establishes a number of important goals for the town's Chappaqua Hamlet, including but not limited to the development of a coordinated marketing campaign to promote the hamlet to potential tenants and vendors, and thereby attract, retain, and support diverse local businesses and establishments within our downtown. Now therefore be resolved that the town board establishes the Discover Chappaqua Committee, which shall be comprised of up to 15 members appointed for 2-year terms, except that the initial term shall be staggered in 2- and 1-year increments, and be further resolved, the mission statement is reflected herein and as follows. And may be further resolved that, subject to the town's administrator's review, approval, and oversight, the committee will manage the following, which is the website and social media, marketing, and certain events. Be it further resolved that all revenue received from the payment of the fee associated with the vacant storefront registry shall be maintained by the town controller in a separate budget line titled Discover Chappaqua, and only used by the town for programs that market and promote the general and commercial welfare of the Chappaqua Hamlet. Quick question, since we're including Millwood, it doesn't matter, it's all.
But I actually wanted to just amend that, I just should, just on the off chance that Discover Chappaqua doesn't need the money that is generated by the storefront registry, I'd like it to say, or to otherwise enhance the Chappaqua Hamlet, just to cover all bases.
So is that,
To the local.
I don't, that doesn't necessarily change.
No, but this is saying all revenue received from the payment of the fees shall be maintained, budget line titled Discover Chappaqua.
Right.
So just adding those few words at the end.
I've no issues with that,
Yeah.
so we
Okay.
consider
And
that.
just one more,
So amended?
I apologize for this, I should have flagged this earlier. In events, the committee will provide funding for special events. I would change the word funding to support for, because I think largely what the committee will provide is assistance with, marketing, promotion, that sort of thing, as opposed to funding.
Okay, so with those two amendments.
So moved as to the amendments.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. You're up, Lisa.
Awesome, okay.
Slide removal, I wanted you to have.
Whereas on December 6th, the town issued a request to obtain bids for the transportation and recycling services of approximately 400 tons of dry aluminum drinking water sludge at Millwood Wastewater Treatment Plant. And whereas the value of the bids was exceedingly high in comparison with the cost paid in the past, now therefore be it resolved that the town board hereby rejects all bids opened on December 30th, 2019, received in response to the town's request for bids for water treatment plant sludge removal and recycling services for 2020, and authorizes town staff to modify and reissue the bid request.
Second.
Oh, sorry, be it further resolved, the town board hereby authorizes and empowers the Commissioner of Public Works or his designee to take all actions necessary to implement the purpose of the resolution.
Now I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to adopt the following resolution. All right. Census 2020. Be it resolved that in connection with the 2020 census, the town board hereby establishes the Newcastle Complete Count Committee for the purpose of, 1, increasing the self-response rate for households responding to online, by phone, or mailing back their questionnaire through focused, structured, neighbor-to-neighbor program. To utilize the local knowledge, expertise, and influence of each Complete Count committee member to design and implement a census awareness campaign targeted to the community, and bring together a cross-section of community members whose focus is 2020 census awareness. Be it further resolved that the committee shall be comprised of up to 9 members to be appointed by the town supervisor.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have the last one.
Which is the litigation.
This one.
Go for it.
All right.
Oh, what?
Jason's doing it, never mind.
Sure. I move to adopt the following resolution. Whereas in 2017, the town solicited bids to replace the concrete sidewalk and curbing on south side of King Street, New York State Route 120, starting near Elm Street and proceeding up the Douglas G. Grafflin Middle School.
Elementary school.
Elementary school. Now, therefore, be it resolved that pursuant to New York Town Law 68, the town board hereby approves Con Edison's payment to the town of the sum of $95,000 to fully compensate the town for additional costs and expenses that the town incurred by completing the project in 2 phases. And further resolved, upon review of and approval of the town attorney, the town administrator is authorized to execute a limited release and such other documents as necessary to effectuate the aforementioned settlement.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Clear.